and that all lanes have been shut down, at least on the 120 loop. There have been a couple of deaths on the interstate. So what I'm going to do is wait 10 minutes to get started today in case we have any applicants who have not arrived for this meeting. So please bear with us. Thank you. Good morning again, and thank you for coming to our Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. I believe we'll have a moment of silence today in lieu of an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Those of you who are willing, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Please rise for our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our meeting is now called to order. I'm going to turn things over to John Peterson, our zoning manager, to walk us through today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. We ask that when the case is called, the applicant please stand up and raise their hand to show that they are in attendance. After that, we're going to call to see if there's anyone here opposed to a specific case. We would also ask that the opposition please stand up and raise their hand so they can be counted for the official record. After that, both parties will be sworn in. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. It's important to note that each side only gets 10 minutes to state their case or concerns. There's not a process to reserve your time or to rebut previous comments, so you need to convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on an issue, you may want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information over and over. After that, the board will start to discuss the case at hand. From the discussions, they may ask one or more people to come back to the front for additional comments or questions. And after that, the board will make a decision to either approve, deny, hold, or continue the matter at hand. Madam Chair and Board, there are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued and held by either the Planning Commission or staff, and these cases will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z55 of 2022, Kenneth B. Clary. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z55 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z60 of 2022, Branch Acquisition Company, LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z60 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z65 of 2022, Drapac Investments, LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z65 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z67 of 2022, SMB Investments Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z67 of 2022 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z8 of 2023, Timelines Express by Northgate. This case was continued by the staff until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z8 of 2023 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z9 of 2023, Argus Vivas Centro Familiar de Adoración Incorporated request was held by the Planning Commission until the May 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission zoning hearing, so Z9 of 2023 will not be heard today. Other business, item number 17 of 2023, Create Homes LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the May 16th, 2023 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing, so OB 17 will not be heard today. Madam Chair and Board, there are two other cases in your other business agenda which the applicant has asked for a continuance. First one is other business item number 18 of 2023, Johnson Ferry Road LLC. The applicant did ask this case be continued, Madam Chair and Board, so we just need to vote on that one.
Commissioner Richardson.
Motion to continue OB 18 to the next zoning hearing on
May 16th.
May 16th. Thank you.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Second case, The applicant is asked in this case be continued until your May 16th hearing date. And that would be other business item number 19 of 2023, Twilliger Papa's Multifamily Partners LLC. The applicant does want to work on the plan for another month, Madam Chair and Board, so they would ask that you continue other business item number 19.
Okay, Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to continue OB 19 to the May 16th zoning.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And before we start the hearing, I would like to ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off on your cell phone as the ringing does interfere with the broadcast and presentations. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement if they made a campaign contribution of $250 or more to a current member of the Board of Commissioners within the last 2 years. Additional information about this requirement is located on the table in the back of the room. And I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. Madam Chair and Board, I did get one request today for an early head count for other business item number 56 of 2022, Stein Investment Group. Can I get a show of people here who are opposed to other business item number 56? Please stand up and raise your hands. Three. Okay.
Yes.
Let the record show there's 3 people who are opposed. Is there anyone here in support of other business item number 56? Please stand up and raise your hands.
6.
Let the record show there's 6 people here in support of other business item number 56. And I would remind that both parties that they need to leave at least one person here to address the board when the case is finally called. And at this point, Madam Chair and Board, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Please, yes.
Cobb County Board of Commissioners zoning hearing consent agenda for April 18th, 2023. First case on consent is rezoning case Z7. Patricia Cunningham requests a rezoning from GC to R15 for a single-family residence in land lots 1208 and 1241 of the 16th district. The property is located on the east side of Lot Avenue at the terminus of Rosewood Circle. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z7 to the R15 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, single-family use only. Number 2, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. And number 3, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z7?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. Moving into other business cases on the consent agenda. First case is other business item number 14 of 2023, which is to consider a stipulation amendment for Chance Bean regarding rezoning application Z32 of 2009 and other business item number 77 of 2016 for property located on the northwest intersection of Canton Road and Hawkins Store Road in land lots 228 and 277 of the 16th district. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. Number 2, Fire Department comments contained in the other business packet. Number 3, site plan review comments contained in the other business packet. Number 4, sign rendering contained in the other business packet with the district commissioner to approve minor modifications. Is the applicant present? Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 14? The applicant's not present, Madam Chair Board, but there's no one here opposed.
Okay. Commissioner Burrow, what would you like to do?
There's nobody here opposed?
No.
Nor the applicant is here.
Do you want to just leave it on consent?
Well, I didn't have any opposition from it, and
You may want to turn on your
as
microphone.
long as it complies with the sign ordinance,
Yes,
I'm good with it.
The sign does meet the sign ordinance.
Yes,
Okay.
so I'd leave it on consent.
Okay.
All right. The business item number 15 of 2023 is to consider a reduction of public road frontage from 75 feet to 12 feet for Shamul Wolf. The property is located on the north side of Lower Roswell Road and land lot 1115 of the 16th district. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, lot road frontage reduction approved to 12 feet. Number 2, stormwater management comments contained in the other business packet. Number 3, water and sewer comments contained in the other business packet. And number 4, fire department comments contained in the other business packet. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 15?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. And finally, other business item number 16 of 2023 is to consider a reduction of minimum lot size from 20,000 square feet to 9,440 square feet for Lot A and to 8,974 square feet for Lot B for Built Development Group LLC. The property is located on the northwest side of Concord Drive in land lots 351 and 352 of the 17th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, Lot A reduced to 9,440 square feet. Number 2, Lot B reduced to 8,974 square feet. Number 3, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. Number 4, stormwater management comments contained in the other business packet. And number 5, site plan review comments contained in the other business packet. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 16?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. And that completes the consent agenda, Madam Chair and Board.
Thank you. I believe there have been no revisions to the consent agenda. Commissioners have anything to modify? Okay, go ahead.
John, on OB 14, you never read in staff recommendation and the stipulations for that one. Because we were questioning if we were going to leave it on consent without the applicant being here.
Okay, I'll read those. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
For going back to other business item 14, staff recommends approval, subject to number 1, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. Number 2, fire department comments contained in the other business packet. Number 3, site plan review comments contained in the other business packet. And number 4, sign rendering contained in the other business packet with district commissioner approving minor modifications.
Okay. And you're good with that, Commissioner Burrow? Okay, very good. With that,
He's already said it's in compliance with the sign ordinance. So
you're good?
that's what I want to make sure of.
Okay.
You can add that, John. You can add that. It's in compliance with the sign
Yes,
ordinance.
the staff did check the sign, and the sign meets the sign code as far as the height, size, and everything else.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Commissioners, I move that we approve today's consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0. Anyone who is here for an application in the consent agenda is free to leave at this time unless you desire to hear any other matters on today's agenda.
Okay. And Madam Chair and Board, the next zoning case we're going to come to is Z59-2022, which also has a companion special land use permit. Would it be the board's desire to hear both cases together and just make separate motions?
Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay.
John, before we do that, Commissioner Burrow has a question on hands.
Madam Chair, I've submitted a statement to the clerk
Okay,
to be captured for everybody.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I also have a statement on file. Please record.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, all right, John, feel free to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving to continued cases. The first cases we're going to hear today is rezoning case Z59 of 2022, Glenside Mapleton LLC. Request rezoning from GC to O&I for a climate-controlled self-storage facility in land lot 297 of the 18th District. Property is located on the southwest side of Mapleton Parkway, north of South Gordon Road. Along with its special land use permit, SLEP 11 of 2022, Glenside Mapleton LLC requests a special land use permit for a climate-controlled self-storage in land lot 297 of the 18th District. Property is located on the southwest side of Mapleton Parkway, north of South Gordon Road. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 11 or Z59? Please stand and raise your hands. Got 2. Okay, let the record show there's 2 people here opposed. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
John, do you want to ask who's here in support? Thank you.
Is there anyone here in support of rezoning case Z59 or SLEP 11? Please stand and raise your hands.
No.
Okay,
No
thank
need.
you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kevin. Please feel
morning.
free to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Kevin Moore here on behalf of the owner and applicant, Glenside Mableton, in this applications for rezoning as well as a special land use permit for a project on this 3.85 acre tract located on Mableton Parkway. What is proposed is for a climate-controlled self-storage facility on this property. This property, as you can see from your GIS and from your aerial map, is currently zoned general commercial. It has always been zoned GC, located on Mableton Parkway. That's what I sometimes term it, a legacy general commercial zoning. It has not been developed as some of the other GC properties are along this stretch of Mableton Parkway, though it does have that general commercial zoning. The proposal is to rezone the property to NRC, neighborhood retail commercial, as well as for a proposed special land use permit, as I said, for a climate-controlled self-storage facility. This property also is located within a neighborhood activity center along this stretch of Mableton Parkway. Though importantly for our purposes and discussion, where this is located, it's north of the intersection with South Gordon Road, so it's not at the intersection, and it's also well south of another good intersection on Mableton Parkway. This particular owner has owned the property for well over 20 years. They have watched and tried to market the property, tried to sell the property for any type of retail or commercial type of use. Finally, they have come forward now with this proposed use. This has been held a number of times, or continued a number of times before coming to you. We made every effort to work with the Mableton Improvement Coalition and had a lot of great conversations. Ultimately, they are not supportive of this proposal, and they have their reasons, and I know they will speak to that. But this particular applicant does have a great deal of expertise in the commercial arena and retail arena and office arena. And it's their opinion, after evaluating for a very long time, that really the best use of the property is for the proposed storage use, and I'll get to that in particular. They do not believe, despite all of their experience in the commercial and retail space, that where this property is particularly located is a mid-block type of property, that it can be successfully executed and developed as some other type of commercial or retail use, which is frankly what the Mableton Improvement Coalition is looking for, something other than storage. We understand that, but these folks have, like I said, a great deal of expertise in that arena and in that space, and do not believe it would be successful here, despite their efforts. That's why we continued it over and over again so that they could try and see that, and they did not feel that that was something they could be successful on, and so we are now bringing forward this proposal. Turning to the site plan itself, the proposal for this 3.85 acres currently zoned general commercial is to rezone it to neighborhood retail commercial. It is a proposed two-story self-storage facility. In keeping with the surrounding area, you don't have large buildings here, and we do abut residential to the rear of this property, and so that was in part being sensitive and considerate of where this is located. It is on the smaller size of 52,500 square feet for this property, which makes it appropriate for the property as well as appropriately sized for the neighborhood that it finds itself in. In addition, I'm going to turn to the actual proposed type of elevation. So that you can see really the scale that we're looking at here. This is from another storage facility that had a particular look that was we found to be very attractive and appealing, so that it's not simply a block structure, but one that has character and that would speak to the design guidelines that are present on Mableton Parkway, as well as provide for interest from a visual and aesthetic standpoint. Also, you'll note along the frontage here, where you can see this on the elevation itself, we have provided for a minimum of 2,000 square feet of retail office space. We would actually hope that that could be a little bit more than that, and it may be in the final design, but what we're trying to do is create, at least visually for those driving by, that it's not simply a self-storage facility, but it does have a retail and office component to it along the frontage so that it makes that statement from a visual standpoint. The architecture, the landscaping, and the overall design will be consistent with the Mableton Parkway design guidelines. In addition, this property, as I stated, is, as proposed, consistent with your future land use plan, which has this property contained within a neighborhood activity center. This proposal has received the full recommendation of approval from your professional zoning staff. That is both the zoning request as well as the request for a special land use permit. And this applicant stands in agreement with all of staff's proposed conditions and comments as well. We think this, frankly, is the best use of this property, which puts it into production, which makes it a viable, usable, successful project and successful property, as opposed to simply holding the world together like it is now, waiting on something to happen. And that something has not occurred for 20 years, and we don't anticipate it'll happen anytime soon. But we do believe this could be a valuable part of the retail and commercial nature along Mableton Parkway, especially given what we've agreed to do and what this applicant has agreed to do in terms of how it will overall fit in terms of architecture and in terms of simply its massing and its size and its scope, which we think is very appropriate given the surrounding neighborhood. I can answer any questions that you may have and respectfully request this board's approval of the rezoning request as well as request for a special land use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll now hear from opposition.
Good morning. My name is Robin Meyer, and I co-chair the Zoning Committee for the Mableton Improvement Coalition. I'm here today to ask that you deny this application for self-storage here in Mableton. If it were to be built, this self-storage facility would have a detrimental effect on the adjacent neighborhood to the west of the property. The site plan that you've seen for this proposal is a bit confusing because it includes property that is not subject to the zoning application and is not under the control of the applicant. If you look at the image that's on your screens now, that green line is a driveway to a cell tower. And that property is separate and apart from the Glenside Mableton property. The 40-foot buffer that's referenced related to this property is actually on the cell tower property, not on the storage property. And thus, that buffer cannot be guaranteed by this applicant, and it cannot be enforced by the county. When the cell tower property was zoned some time back, it was zoned with a 15-foot buffer. When there was another business agenda item subsequent to that original zoning, it was found that the cell tower property was in violation of some of those original zoning stipulations. So today, we have no way of knowing how adequate that buffer actually is, and would not know until the grading takes place for the Glenside property and it can actually be seen. This is additional information about that buffer, which is probably more detailed than we need to go into this morning. But the underlying issue here is that 40-foot buffer is not on the Glenside property. I'd also like to be clear that this is a 100,000 square foot self-storage facility. It has a 50,000 square foot footprint, but it's 100,000 square feet of additional storage capacity in our community. When this application was originally pending last fall, we did a survey of storage facilities in our community because we believed anecdotally that we were saturated with self-storage. And what we found is that is exactly the case. Within a 10-minute drive, within 5 miles of this site, there are 16 other self-storage facilities, one of which was approved in May, just about a mile down the Mableton Parkway from this site, and is now in permitting. We did a telephone survey of the closest competitors. You can see them marked in the blue boxes on the map. And although this was a survey done last fall, please bear in mind that we have that new facility coming online well, certainly before this one could be built, since the new one, Z27, is now in permitting. Our caller asked about the availability of storage units. It was plain that there was no shortage. Concessions were offered on rent. Every size storage unit was available. One offered to hold the unit for free with no commitment on the part of the renter. None made the usual sort of sales pitch of get it before it's gone. So there is, as best we can understand, there is no shortage and no need for additional storage in our community. Interestingly, when we met with the applicants last fall, they brought with them a market study that they said proved the need for additional self-storage in our community. We asked if we could look at that market study, and they said sure, but it was never provided. So we can only analyze this application based on the information that we have available to us, and this is the information that we have. This is not just a rezoning application, but it's also an application for a special land use permit, which, as you know, it stands to a higher standard than does a zoning application, or a different standard at any rate. The first one of which I'd like to call out is whether or not there will be a negative impact on the neighborhood or the area in which the applicant, the proposed use will be located. We believe that there will be an adverse use, simply because that adjacent buffer upon which the applicant is depending is not under their control or subject to this application. Additionally, redevelopment is just beginning along this corridor. As you know from recent zoning decisions that you all have made, residential development is strong in Mableton right now, and taking up valuable frontage on a major thoroughfare with a use that is already available in our community crowds out other businesses that are needed in our community. Once self-storage is built, it's self-storage. It's not like another sort of commercial use, which might be, in all candor, originally might start off as a dollar store, but might turn into a restaurant. Self-storage is self-storage for a long, long time to come. SLUP criteria number 3 is whether or not it's otherwise compatible with the neighborhood. This is not otherwise compatible with the neighborhood. This redeveloping area needs a variety and array of different consumer-related businesses, and this is not a need in our community. SLUP criteria 4, 5, and 11 has to do with the surrounding property values, the enjoyment of that property, and adequate landscape plans. That's I'm going back to that impact on the homes nearby. We believe that this proposal would have a negative impact on those neighbors. Whether or not the site intensity is appropriate, again, this is a situation where we have a high visibility parcel on a major corridor. It should be used for businesses that rely on that kind of visibility. You can find self-storage. All you need to do is type into Google Maps self-storage and they pop right up. You do not need to drive by one to know that it's there. We ask that you deny this application for rezoning and for the special land use permit. There's not adequate screening or separation between this large warehouse structure and the adjacent single-family homes. We are saturated with self-storage. We need room in our community for the other consumer-oriented businesses that we lack, and this application does not meet the SLUP criteria as we have outlined. In the 80s and 90s, Mableton was ground zero for the development of warehouses that sold interior decor, frame shops, art frame kinds of businesses. They were touted as really almost as an economic development tool for our community. Well, that market came and that market went, and now our community is overwhelmed with empty warehouses, one of which has been converted into self-storage with our support. But please don't let self-storage become the saturated use that those art frame warehouses did. Don't leave our community 20 years from now with storage facilities that are no longer economically viable because there are just plain too many of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are 2 minutes remaining if there are any other persons in opposition that desire to speak. All right. Seeing none, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with John in asking you a question. I have conflicting information in my notes with respect to the number of parking spaces. With the addition of the retail space, can you confirm how many required parking spaces they'll need?
For required parking, I have 17 in the staff analysis that are required, and the applicant's showing 21 that are proposed.
And that takes into account the additional retail space?
That's
as
correct.
well as the storage space?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. I do have a question for Kevin. Where'd it go? Are there any additional variance requests or any variance requests as a result of the retail space?
No, no variances are requested.
Okay. With respect to the buffer, it was shared earlier that part of the buffer for the cell tower, that property was included in your site plan. Can you walk us through that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Turning to the site plan, it is confusing, but this is a separate parcel. If you follow me, there's a drive that comes in and then goes around to the rear where there's a cell tower. That's a separate parcel from the actual 3.85 acres that were proposed for rezoning. So this area in here is what's the cell tower parcel. We have provided on our property here the minimum 40-foot buffer adjacent to residential here. This parcel is the cell tower parcel that has the other buffer as part of its approval, which is right here.
But that 40-foot landscape buffer, that's on the property of the cell tower, correct?
The cell tower is a separate parcel that has its own
Buffer,
zoning required buffer, correct. It's not part of our property.
right, okay.
So the 40-foot buffer we have provided for is adjacent to the residential that we're adjacent to.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any other questions. Do you have questions? You guys have questions for Kevin? No? Okay. Let me see. I do have a question for GDOT. Pardon? Oh, what did I say? GDOT? I'm sorry. We're working on a GDOT project. I'm sorry.
DOT.
We want you to stay right here, Lahia.
Yes, well, it is a state route, so it is the jurisdiction of the Georgia DOT.
Okay, I knew it just
Probably what
kind
you
of
were
stuck.
thinking
It was buried in the back of my mind.
Yes.
Now, what was my question? I think your last comments were dated, and let me see, I think it might have been August.
August.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm whether or not there were any updates to your comments for this
Not
property.
so far, but I think there might have been conversations about the traffic study and what conversations the applicant has had with the Georgia Department of Transportation, since they have jurisdiction of this state route. So they will be ultimately the approval of the encroachment permit or whatever permit they need along the state route. So therefore, we might revise our comments depending on what GDOT says. For example, there's a deceleration lane, we will require it, but GDOT might think differently if that's the case. But it does meet for a deceleration lane per the standards, something like that.
Okay, all right. Do you guys have any questions for GDOT, otherwise known as Cobb DOT? No? Okay. Thanks, Lakia.
You're welcome.
All right, yeah, this one has been on the books for quite a while, so I'm glad to finally put a bow on this one today. And Thank you, Kevin, for your presentation, and also Robin with Mick for your very detailed information and presentation. The current general commercial category provides for uses for retail, commercial, and this property is obviously currently zoned as GC, but it provides for uses for retail, commercial services that are land intensive. The applicant zoning request of ONI, or office in an institutional zoning category, specifically for storage facility, would provide for step-down nodal zoning and a less intensive commercial use. The community of the proposed location has taken shape, as you guys heard this morning from Robin Meyer, with new residential development. There's a proposed NRC development that will include retail approximately just 1 mile from this location. And I'll add, at that proposed location is a smaller, is less acres than the proposed site of the storage unit. So when I hear that this is the only thing that can go here, I kind of question that, because we, again, are anticipating a zoning application for a retail location. The Mableton Sidewalk Project is near completion, and that will connect residents from the Silver Comet Trail to the new site of the regional trailhead for the 100-mile Chattahoochee Riverland project. But while the applicant contends that a storage unit is the only suitable use for the property, the current request is not compatible with the 40-year comprehensive plan, nor is the use complementary to the development or the economic viability of the community. The property is in a neighborhood activity center with a NAC future land use category. I support staff's recommendation to delete the zoning request to NRC, which would be consistent with the NAC future use category. And to that end, Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yes.
I make a motion to delete Z59 to the NRC zoning district, subject to the following: prohibited uses to include but not be limited to liquor stores or any alcohol sales, adult entertainment, sales of sexually explicit or drug-related paraphernalia, smoke or vape shops, pawn shops and title pawn shops, gold or precious metal dealers, check cashing establishments, discount sales, wholesale only sales establishments, gun, knife, or weapon sales, shooting ranges, thrift stores, secondhand stores or flea markets, storage facilities, auto sales, and auto-related businesses, with the final use to be approved by the district commissioner, and the final landscape plans are to be approved by the district commissioner. Approval is also subject to fire department comments and recommendations, stormwater management division comments and recommendations, water and sewer comments and recommendations, and the Department of Transportation comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0, and I believe we'll hear the SLUP motion.
Yep. I'll assume there's no additional presentation for the SLUP.
At the beginning of the hearing, we said that we included all into one.
Okay, well, I would like to make a motion to deny SLUP 11.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have some comments or observations,
sure.
Commissioner. The NRC recommendation is a deletion of a use that typically doesn't include storage. Is that correct?
Well, the NRC zoning district permits a storage facility if it's approved with the SLUP. And the commissioner's motion was to delete that use out of the permitted uses for NRC.
Okay, but generally in the NRC zoning category, would a SLUP for a storage facility be consistent with that code?
Yes.
Okay. And I ask that, I'm trying to understand the basis for the zoning analysis. I was looking at the zoning analysis for this SLUP, and then SLUP, I believe, 11, that was at the intersection of Terrell Mill and I forget the other roadway. And I just wanted to make some observations that I need some help understanding, because when I look at the SLUP analysis, for both of these matters, there is consideration for residential adjacent to both sites. However, when I look at the SLUP analysis that was in District 2, it provides that the use next to residential would not be compatible, that it may impact quiet enjoyment. And there are other zoning comments that would indicate that this is not a compatible use. However, when I looked at District 4, I see staff remarks that provide that it is a compatible use. It states that quiet enjoyment will not be impacted. Give me one moment. Looking at SLUP 14, excuse me, at SLUP 14 of East Cobb and at SLUP 11 of District 4. It states here for District 4 that this permits a use that is suitable to adjacent and nearby properties. It states that it will not adversely affect the existing or usability of adjacent or nearby properties. It states that quiet enjoyment will not be adversely impacted. And I can't understand why it has an adverse impact in East Cobb, but it does not in South Cobb. So I'm asking you, in the future, please make sure that we are being consistent as we are assessing SLUPs for any community across Cobb, that it should not matter where it is located, that if it has an adverse impact to residential in one area, certainly we can perceive that it would have an adverse impact next to any residential area. Those are my remarks. Are there any other comments or questions? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, next case is rezoning case Z2 of 2023, SWI Investments LLC, request rezoning from GC to PVC for a mixed-use development with retail and multifamily development in land lot 207 of the 17th District. The property is located on the southeast side of Austell Road, northeast of Sandtown Road, and on the north side of Parker Drive. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here for Z2? Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z2?
No.
Madam Chair and Board, the applicant is not present for rezoning case Z2.
Okay, Commissioner, let us know what you'd like to do.
Have we heard from the applicant at all?
No, we have not, but just for context, this is a case in which the staff did recommend it be denied, and the Planning Commission also recommended it be not denied.
Okay. Can we at least attempt to reach
Yes.
the applicant? Okay.
All right, so put this case on hold right now and move on to the next case.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner Hess.
John, one
Go
other
ahead, Commissioner.
question. Did the applicant show up for the Planning Commission hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sheffield, I'll let you determine how to move forward.
Oh, yeah, we're going to reach out to the applicant and just move on to the
Okay,
next case
thank
for
you.
right now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, moving on to temporary land use permits. LUP 6 of 2023, Antonio Rodriguez requests a temporary land use permit to allow more vehicles than the code allows and adults than the code allows in land lots 155 of the 17th district. Property is located on the east side of Austell Circle, southeast of Austell Road. Is the applicant present? Oh, let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 6?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Hello, everyone in this room.
Hello.
I'm just here for...
Sir, state your name for the record, please.
Oh, okay. My name is Antonio Rodriguez,
Okay.
and I'm just here to give permits for 2 cars on my driveway,
Okay.
because I have a record that people have been calling me on me that I have so many cars, and I've just got 4 cars, 1 for me, for my work truck, my wife, and my youngest boy. And,
I'm sorry, state who the vehicles are for again?
I say I have 4 cars, 1 for me, and my work truck, my wife's car, and my youngest boy.
Okay.
He just finished high school. And I buy the truck for him, for go to school. And
Okay.
I just want to get a permit for the other 2 cars because my house was smaller. And that's
Okay.
all.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate
you.
it. Is there anyone here in opposition to this matter? Okay. Seeing none, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm sorry, before you sit, would you mind returning? I have a question for you. I just need some clarification. I just want to be clear on the number of vehicles at the property. You mentioned 4, but you also mentioned that you purchased a truck for your son, and I just wanted to make sure that that was one of the 4.
Yeah, it's 4.
So you have 4,
4
and,
vehicles.
and one of the 4 is a work vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay, for your work, not for
For me.
for your work, okay. All right, thanks. Does anybody else have any questions? No? You have a question?
Are all 4 parked outside in the driveway or any in
No,
the garage?
in the driveway.
All 4?
What's a
Yeah,
carport?
on the driveway.
He said on the driveway. I'm not sure he just stated on the driveway.
Right, none in the garage, or is there a garage?
I have just 1 garage. Well, it's just not garage, it's just roof. It's not
Carport?
covered.
It's not-
Carport.
Okay.
So I see in the picture that's on the screen here, there is a truck that is parked at the lower hand. Yep. Is that your vehicle?
Yeah, but that's pavers parking. This is the number 4 car. I always have a 3 on the front, and I'm parking that one on the back side because I don't use it.
Okay, is there a
But-
driveway, though, from where this truck is parked to the road? Is there a
Didn't-
driveway?
No, it's pavers.
There's pavers.
It's parking on the pavers.
But from where it's parked on the pavers to get to the road, do you
Oh,
have to go
it's-
across the grass?
It's grass, across the grass.
Thank you. Thank you, that's.
Okay.
Let me just take a quick look at something. I got it. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for joining us today. I understand it was a challenge for you to join us last month, so I appreciate you joining us here today. The application request is a result of code enforcement complaints for the number of vehicles parked at the location. And as I reviewed the code enforcement complaints, it was primarily the number of vehicles. I didn't find that there were any complaints with respect to parking on the grass or any other code enforcement violation once the code enforcement officers visited the site. But based on the square footage of the home, the current code allows for 2 vehicles and 2 adults. And I understand that one is a work vehicle and the other 3 are personal vehicles for you and your family members. The land use permit request is for a 2-year period. I actually had another question for him, but that's okay. So in reviewing the GIS of the property, the driveway is very long, and it appears that there was some type of modification or upgrade to the driveway. It's certainly long enough to accommodate 4 vehicles without creating any visual obstruction to drivers along Austell Circle, which was also another complaint that we received. But to that end, Madam Chair, I am prepared to make a motion. Okay, let me just modify one condition. Okay. Okay, I make a motion to approve LUP 6 2023 with the following conditions. The approval is for a 2-year period. Any extension of that period would need to come back before the Board of Commissioners for approval or for consideration. No more than 4 vehicles and 4 adults at the property. All vehicles are to be parked in the driveway, including the vehicle that is currently parked to the south or the east of the property. In the event the applicant no longer has a work vehicle, then the maximum number of vehicles at the property shall be 3. And that concludes my motion.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? I would just like to remind staff that this is a code we wanted to revisit for this year. I think it's pretty important, given how tenuous housing is, that we are mindful of that and don't subject every person who particularly, I can't speak to whether or not they're a family member or not. I just think we need to revisit that code that has that very tight ratio. Yes, Commissioner.
The dwelling unit
Yes, ma'am.
code does allow for 4 vehicles outside. And I know that was revised a few years ago from 3 to 4. The no more than 2 unrelated adults, this is a family. And
Correct.
it's a lot different than students or, roommates that aren't related occupying a single-family residence in a neighborhood. So I just, in each case, we have to review case by case, and they're all, well, not all, but are most different. And this being a family, I can support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, and this might just be my own ignorance, but for situations where you have family visiting from out of town, I'm just concerned that, oh, there are 4 cars, and there's a limit on 3, and mother-in-law's in town for Thanksgiving or something like that, and code enforcement gets called. How does that impact?
That's not permanent. John, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or Jessica?
Yes, I'll be glad to speak to that. So for an instance like that, whenever we have a complaint about parking and the number of vehicles, code enforcement will send an officer out over the course of several days. And if we see that consistently all of those vehicles are there, that's when violation would be considered. But if it's a visitor, they're not going to be there more than a few days.
Thank you. I just wanted to make
I
sure.
appreciate you asking that, Commissioner.
Yeah, what I was going to say, which was supported in the code violation report, there were several visits where it was consistently 4, or there, at times there were 5, so it shows that there's a little inconsistency.
Yes, and looking at the report, I saw 1 instance of 5, but most of the complaints were 4, which is not consistent with what Commissioner Burrow was sharing. If there is now a code section that allows for 4 vehicles to be parked outside.
But it also relates back to the 390 feet.
That's what I
of
thought.
the
There is
house.
still a constraint on the square
One car per
footage.
390,
Okay,
Yeah, I
but a
think,
maximum of 4 outside.
okay, a maximum of, still based on square footage. Okay.
Yeah.
and I think that was part of what, at least I know I was interested in seeing, is instead of square footage, maybe something around acreage
Number
of
of
the lot.
bedrooms.
Yeah, just something else as far as to be considered. And then, yeah, I asked the question because there have been previous complaints. I didn't want there to be kind of a targeted use of that, so, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we had a motion and a second. Call the question. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, we did get an update for rezoning case Z2. The applicant is on their way.
Okay.
Okay, so
Very
we'll just
good.
keep on going through the agenda.
Okay. And Mr. Rodriguez, your permit was approved. You're welcome.
And unless you just love looking at us, you're free to leave.
Are we going to wait for Z2, or are we going to go on?
We're going to continue, but the applicant's on their way. He is.
Yes, he is. Oh, yeah. He's back
He's here.
I can't see him. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is other business, item number 56 of 2022, which is to consider amending the site plan for Stein Investment Group regarding rezoning application Z223 of 1988 and rezoning application Z95 of 1990. The property is located at the northwest intersection of Shalford Road and Gordy Parkway. The applicant is present. Earlier, there are 3 people here opposed and 6 in support. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
CP. Do me a favor, my friend. This one first, not the one in the photos, just the one just. Who's getting the photos?
Commissioner, your mic is on. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Greetings from Florida.
From Florida.
Well, I was with my family there on vacation, my 3 daughters, my 3 grandchildren, and they had to tie me up, put me in the trunk, and
And you had to come back?
Thank you for being here.
I wasn't coming back.
Considering the circumstances.
I wasn't coming back, although it's commensurate with the amount of money we were paying per day, so it worked out fine. Anyway, I don't mean to digress, but good morning. It was good to see all of you. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, and Huff here in Marietta, and we represent in connection with this application, the Stein Investment Group, Stein. They're here today, both Daniel Ginberg and also Jason Linscott. If y'all could just raise your hand. They're right back there. Also, we have a representative from King's Hawaiian. That is the restaurant for whom we're repping. And I'm pretty sure we have the project manager, Michelle Scheffler, here with us today. There she is, demurely raising her hand back there. But the fact of the matter is, they know this stuff better than anybody. This is a whole case, so I'm not going to go through the 34-year history of how this was set up back in the late 80s. It's been successful. It was genius at the time. You know, I didn't do it, so I can say that with impunity. But it was a great look at what's going to happen in the future. But there's no way to predict what's going to happen 35 years from now. So we are where we are, which is in a good place. Last fall in 2022, King's Hawaiian. If you don't know them, then you don't know bread. They've got the best bread in the world, particularly with barbecue sandwiches with sweet barbecue sauce. You can't beat that. This started out is called, it was called Project Ohana, and we couldn't disclose the name last time we were before you. Now it's Hello Hilo. Hilo is a major city in, I think, on the Big Island. And it's also where this family, I can't pronounce their name, but for 70 years they've run King's Hawaiian and run it well. It was a niche, whatever the right word is, but now it's just so widespread and so popular that they wanted to take it nationally. And actually they had done so beforehand. There's a 150,000 square foot distribution center right now in Gainesville. It may be outside of incorporated Gainesville in the county of Hall. But nevertheless, that's been there for quite some time. So their first flagship is coming out of the ground right now simultaneously with this one. So it's their first two restaurants. Now, this family has done some restaurants out in California, LA, Hollywood, other places, but this is the first real conceptual foray into a community. And this is going to be kind of an oasis in a sub area with, you know, it's a nice area. Gordy Park was master planned, but for the most part, this is kind of like a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you. When I looked at the imagery, I thought, holy moly, East Cobb hadn't seen this. When the commissioner saw it, she said, that's pretty. When the Architectural Control Committee saw it, they said, we don't do that here in East Cobb. And I said, well, what's that? And said, well, it's too colorful. It's too bright. And it does have a panoply of colors. And Cornelius is going to pop in some things that I can control with a clicker here. There we go. This is the site itself. It's a small site that we left undeveloped at the time that we developed the sites north of that for climate-controlled self-service storage facilities. And I say we left it alone, but it was very much a central part of those conversations because the neighbors made it palpably clear what they didn't want. They didn't want just a straight-up fast food restaurant. They didn't want any kind of car-centric use, oil change, auto body shop, gas station, C-store, those type things. And of course, all the offers that we got were exactly for that until we were able to mine a little deeper and our broker got a little more energetic. But locally, the comments we've got here in Cobb County have been great. This also appeared as an article in one of the Atlanta, I don't remember if it's the Business Chronicle or what, but absolutely no dislikes, all likes. And I don't do that, so I don't understand the import of that, but I think the reception in the metropolitan Atlanta area has been great, as to the fare they're serving and as to the novel concept. Cordy Tract was originally 407 acres and was master planned by Henry Hayes, who's now the head of the Architectural Control Committee. Now, because of the complexities of this, we've had a little bit of difficulty going through the ACC, but at the end of the day, and I don't know if Mr. Hayes is here today or not, but he's been very pleasant, very patient with me, which is an attribute is only known to few, my past wife and one of my daughters, not the other two. But in any event, he's been very patient with us, and we've gotten information to him as we've gone along, and we've adjusted accordingly. So I apologize that we're just now appearing before you, but it's really simply as a matter of going through the process and making sure everybody knows what's what. Our last revised stipulation letter is dated the 14th, which is last week. This is not a fast food restaurant, it's a fast casual. It's about an 80, about a 70, a 65-35 split between inside and outside. We've got a lanai on the outside, as you can see, by virtue of the positioning right there. So there'll be ample outside eating, so folks will have an opportunity. And even though it looks like we have dual order lanes, we have one order lane, 2 pickup lanes, so it makes it for a great facility. That's what it looks like, sort of a semi-aerial look. Another, remember, this is a small piece of property. We're trying to fit a lot onto it. That's a mural that we've now positioned it so that it has visuality or poignancy within the development itself as opposed to being visible outside. I'm trying to give you peripheral shots so you'll see what other portions of the community are seeing. Trash disclosure, or trash enclosure. And then there's the overall landscape plan as well. Now, I'm running out of time, but I've got to photographs. But I gotta tell you one thing. I think there's only one issue left, and I think that issue has to do with we're asking for an encroachment, a minor encroachment in the 40-foot buffer on a portion of the property. Here's the beginning of the buffer. This shows you another view looking back toward the property. This, and I don't know if you can hone in on it there as far as bring it in on what you got on your video, but this shows the distancing, which is significant, between where Hello Hilo will be and the existing climates, and of course the distance from the tennis courts, and then the massive vegetation along the side of the property. Where's that one? That's the topo. That's the contours. It's tough. It couldn't be developed. It'll always be natural. So we considered we've got a hardship, and I'll talk to that in a little bit. Right now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jason Linscott, who's the primary principal in Stein Investments, and he'd like to talk to you just a little bit. Thank you, Chairman. How much time do I have?
Thank you, and you have about 30 seconds left.
Of course. Cool.
We got 33 seconds.
33.
All right. I'm going to be very fast then. My name is Jason Linscott. I'm with Stein Investment Group out of Atlanta. I won't restate a lot of the stuff that Garvis mentioned about the buffer. It seems like the key issue here hasn't been the buffer. The ACC did approve the architecture, except for the mural, which we've now oriented internally so it doesn't face the right-of-way. And of course, and these two Gordy Parkway trees, which is another thing we've discussed. Just a couple of quick hits. Traffic has been another thing. Our plan actually reduces traffic by 40% over the previous use.
Thank you. Your time has run. 1 moment. I'll defer to the commissioner if you want to add time to their comments and add the corresponding amount of time to opposition.
I mean, we have 1 minute.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, I'll allow 1 minute, and then the opposition will get an additional minute as
Thank you,
well.
Commissioner, very much.
Thank you. So in terms of traffic, this actually reduces traffic significantly over what was there previously by about 40%. So I think traffic is something we've been able to address. It's primarily been this buffer, which, as Garvis showed, it really is a buffer to a massive ravine that's owned by Cobb County as part of the park. And the only reason that there's a buffer at all is because the park is zoned for single-family homes. That's why the buffer is required, which of course is not single-family homes. So that's sort of been what our issue is. And I'm gonna stop there so Garvis can wrap up since we're almost out of time again. Thank you.
You have about 30 seconds remaining, Garvis.
I'm not even going to take 15.
Okay.
We have company representatives, and we can respond to questions with a lot more specificity. Jason did a good job wrapping it all up, and I'm sorry I didn't leave him much time, but we've worked hard for 6.5 months on this, and we think we've got it refined to where we want it. The opposition, I'm not sure who they are. I'm sure I've spoken to them, though, and I embrace and appreciate all the HOAs in the area and people that have come out even from around the district. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Commissioner Burrow, thank you for the additional time.
Okay, for opposition, there actually was an additional minute and a half. Oh, no, it was 30 seconds. No, additional minute, because he had 30 seconds prior. Is that correct? Okay, only additional minute.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. My name is Denise Bissell, and I am a 22-year resident of Highland Park. I'm here to represent concerned neighbors in Highland Park, Highland Terrace, and Northampton. I spoke before the board last month on March 21st in opposition to OB 56, and our position has not changed. My home is within 1,000 feet of the proposed King's Hawaiian restaurant. While I have watched this area grow and fill in, this growth has also brought a tremendous increase in traffic and burden to the area. The proposed restaurant would sit between two Cobb County parks of less than a quarter mile, with Lassiter High School just over a quarter mile. This project sits at a dangerous intersection of Shalford Road and Gordy Parkway. This has been the site of many accidents and near misses. Daily, many pedestrians use the sidewalks on Gordy Parkway, including Lassiter High School students, cross-country runners, sports teams and their families, parents with strollers, walkers, and runners. In addition, we have school buses for all ages and young drivers traveling to Lassiter on Gordy. Our concerns are the time of operation for the restaurant are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. This proposes many concerns for early morning traffic for school children and work commuters, as well as after-school release and activities. The proposed plan is to have a 2-lane drive-through, which increases the potential of people being in a rush to get in and out. The traffic coming from the Sandy Plains-Shalford Road intersection going west towards Lassiter. This is a 3-lane stretch that ends at Gordy Parkway. Drivers use the right lane as a passing lane and try to beat the traffic before the light. This will cause potential accidents as these cars try to merge left as cars are pulling into and out of the restaurant. Since the Shalford Road entrance is right in, right out, due to the median, most customers would enter or exit from the smaller 2-lane residential Gordy Parkway entrance. This is also the only entrance and exit for Highland Park and Highland Terrace neighborhoods. Vehicles traveling to the proposed restaurant site will have to feed onto the 2-lane residential part of Gordy Parkway from the majorly congested 4-lane Shalford and Sandy Plains roads. The traffic the proposed drive-through restaurant would create is too intense for the existing road, neighborhoods, 2 parks, and Lassiter High School. 40% less traffic are your numbers, not ours. This was a small theater that kept traffic low with movies starting at 4 p.m. There was also not a steady stream of cars in and out of the theater all day like a drive-through restaurant will generate. All restaurants in this area are contained within a shopping center, meaning you drive into the shopping center and then into the restaurant parking area. This includes fast food restaurants such as Wendy's, Taco Bell, and Chick-fil-A. OB 56 is the only one that would have direct access from the roadways. The others are not at busy intersections to capture the traffic. There's also significant increased traffic from the newly opened Crunch Fitness at the north end of Gordy Parkway, which has increased the flow and amount of traffic to this stretch of Gordy. As I stated last month, we are not opposed to Kings Hawaiian becoming part of Cobb County. However, we feel that this corner creates more danger to our community. A fast food restaurant is too intense for this small property. In 2017, the Board of Commissioners voted down Lidl Grocery on this same property due to traffic and safety issues. We request that Commissioners deny OB 56. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. My name is Chris Lindstrom, representing the East Cobb Civic Association and case manager for OB 56. The applicant's latest stipulation letter received Friday on April 14th has not substantially changed since March's hearing, and neither has ECCA's recommendation. This OB is about trying to fit too large a project on too small a lot. ECCA cannot support the removal of the 40-foot western buffer between Harrison Park and this commercial property. And as shown on the site plan, there is a red line down that red line, thank you. That is the buffer. That's the beginning of the buffer. And that little blue marking right there, that is where people would come and pay. So as shown on the site plan, this project encroaches 36 feet into the existing buffer to add parking near the dumpster area and 30 feet into the existing area to support a canopy and 2 lanes of traffic for the restaurant. This site plan also requires a retention wall approximately 15 feet high to be constructed to level the ground to accommodate the parking spots near the dumpster and 2 traffic lanes. The existing 40-foot buffer was put in place in the late 1980s to delineate the commercial areas from the park both visually and sound-wise. This was an intentional and well-thought-out plan discussed and agreed to by the ACC and Cobb County Commissioners at that time. The need to eliminate the existing buffer and cover it with mostly impervious material for 2 lanes and additional parking, that and alone is a strong indication that the project is too big for the existing site. Now, Mr. Sam's April 14th stipulation letter also refers to the shopping center where Home Depot is now located. The shopping center was backed, when it was built, it was backed up against O&I's zoning. A few years later, well after the shopping center was built, the owner of the O&I property requested to change the O&I to residential. Anyone purchasing a new home there knew up front that the shopping center existed. And just like the new homers at that time, the purchaser of this property knew there was a 40-foot buffer and is now negotiating to remove its existence. Allowing the removal of this buffer in order to expand commercial development defeats its purpose. ECCA is also concerned about the traffic and the proposed entrance to the property from Shalford Road and Gordy Parkway, and subsequent increase in traffic from both roads will increase the probability for more accidents. And placing right turn only signs may not be enough. ECCA is also concerned that the internal traffic congestion, particularly at peak hours, might be an issue. With limited room to maneuver, cars could stack up to enter and exit the property and struggle to find unblocked parking places. Mr. Sams has additional area issues where we disagree, or where we disagreed earlier and still disagree now. I have included a few of these in my notes, which I shared last month, and this time again sharing in writing, but will not have the time to speak on. The major disagreement is not whether King's Hawaiian has high standards or is a good restaurant. The disagreement is whether the project fits on the property while meeting the aforementioned restrictions, and it just does not do that. So our recommendation is to respectfully recommend denial of OB 56. So thank you for your time and consideration, and nice to see everybody.
Is there anyone else in opposition that desires to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
This case has been continued and heard and held since last year, and there's been a lot of meetings, discussions, site visits, and I do appreciate the HOAs, the Architectural Control Committee, the applicant, Mr. Sams, everybody working to see what we could, a solution for this retail portion in front of the storage facilities. And by the way, the storage facilities look very nice. I've gotten a lot of feedback from them of how they do fit in and look very, very nice. And I know that it's open for business now, so wish you a lot of success with that.
Commissioner, I apologize for interjecting. I did not ask for staff's opinion for this other business item and would like to get that before you continue, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Board, the staff would recommend that the Board approve the request, subject to a 40-foot buffer staying adjacent to any R20 zone property, subject to the landscape plan and final site plan to be approved by the District Commissioner, subject to the final architectural plan to be approved by the District Commissioner after review by the Architectural Control Committee, and subject to all staff comments contained in the other business packet.
Thank you, John. Commissioner.
Thanks. Thank you for catching that, because we needed that first. So, to be honest, I have had heartburn with the 40-foot buffer being eliminated or reduced from the very beginning. Mr. Sams knows that, the neighbors know that. It's all wooded there, and it is a big drop-off, and but it would set a precedent for anybody else to remove a 40-foot buffer, and it was put in place for a reason. When the storage facilities were zoned and built, they have the 40-foot buffer, but the way the lot tapers off towards Shallowford, it comes in to where the retail would go. This is a 1.147 lot, and the restaurant is I'm sure a great restaurant, and I think there's a lot of support in the area for a restaurant in this retail spot. It is rather intense, and I can't do away with a 40-foot buffer. I'd like to call Legia up for DOT comments. When some of us visited the site, the applicant had marked off the 40-foot buffer and where it would go. And when we had our meeting after that, you revised the DOT comments to write in, write out only on Gordy and Shallowford because of the proximity to the signal, and also no left in or left out on Gordy because of the neighborhoods and the busy intersection.
That's correct.
So I think your revised comments, they also mention a taper
Correct.
on Shallowford and Gordy.
Correct. Yes, that's what we will recommend.
Okay, and those were revised on April 5th?
Yes, ma'am.
This sheet, okay. So kind of give us, tell us what the taper, as opposed to a decel lane.
Right, at a minimum, we want a 50-foot taper so that we can allow at least one or two cars to get out of the way of the flowing traffic at each of the entrances. And since now it's right in, right out, I think that would be at a minimum what will be required. But it is very close to the intersection on Shallowford.
It is. And the signal there, people turning right on Shallowford, would need to give cars turning in enough access to move over to get in without causing an accident.
Correct. Yeah, so it will be very close on the Shallowford end of it because we're very close to the intersection.
And on Gordy, there is a lot of traffic, because it's kind of a cut through to Sandy Plains and to Shallowford.
Correct.
And we want to be conscious of the neighborhoods on both sides and across the street at Northampton.
Right.
So, all these other things of 50 feet right away, all that will be
That's still required, yes. That's still-
recommended, okay.
Yes.
And approved, okay. And then also, I have a SPLOS project for that intersection to realign it, which hopefully will help. I know a couple years ago, we added a left turn signal from heading south on Gordy to turn left onto Shallowford towards Sandy Plains. And that's been a big help to put that in. So with the realignment, will that help getting in and out at the Home Depot side and?
I would think it will help, and we will investigate. The project is aware of this development coming along as well if it comes along, and they will take into account that that driveway will be there on Shallowford.
But there
and
still
Gordy.
won't be a left turn in.
Correct, no, there will never be a
So
left turn in on either one.
There won't, yeah, they won't be able to turn left into the retail or the storage facility from
Right.
Gordy.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything for Legia?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think I'm ready to make a motion, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Included with my motion and for the record, I would first like to submit Mr. Sam Stipp letter dated August 14th. East Cobb Civic Association's recommendation dated April 11th, and I guess today, April 18th, because they just submitted another one. And Miss Laura Hickman's email dated 4/11/23, and Chris Rink's email dated 4/7/23 for the record, and included in my motion to submit these, because some of these I'm going to be implementing additional steps, but as long as they're not in conflict. if that makes sense. So pass
The
those.
letter from Garvey Sam is
Maybe
April
Clinton.
14th rather than August 14th.
I'm sorry?
The letter from Garvey Sam, April 14th
Oh,
rather than.
did I say August? I'm sorry, April 14th. Well, he probably had one back in August, too. And then I guess we can submit his handout today, too.
Okay.
April 18th. So, I would like to make a motion to approve OB 56 with the following conditions. Maintain a 40-foot buffer adjacent to the R20 zoning, Harrison Park. Compliance with all ACC recommendations and approvals. The trees on Gordy Parkway to remain, the tree line on Gordy Parkway to remain. Right in, right out only on Gordy Parkway and Shallowford. Access in addition to other DOT comments and recommendations revised on 4/5/23 for this use only. Construction hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 5, no Sunday hours, and store hours, or restaurant hours of operation, 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. Landscape committee comprised of a representative from Highland Park and Highland Terrace, HOA, Northampton, East Cobb Civic Association, to review the landscape plan. And of course, the architectural plan will be subject to approval, all recommendations and approval from the Architectural Control Committee headed by Mr. Henry Hayes. District Commissioner to approve final site plan and landscape plan and final architectural plan. And all other steps not otherwise in conflict to remain in effect. And all staff recommendations not otherwise in conflict.
Okay. Thank you. I'll second that. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Gambrill?
Commissioner Burrell, just for clarification, on your stipulation for the trees on Gordy to remain, do you want those to remain in perpetuity? Because my concern is they could possibly be damaged during construction. And then the question is would they have to be replanted?
No, they have to remain. They can't be touched. I mean, they can't be taken out and replanted.
But if
The
they're
tree line
but if
that's
they're
there
damaged,
now
right? But if
needs to
they're
remain.
damaged, do you want them replanted? That's why I'm asking if we should put in perpetuity on there.
Or a tree safe, make it a tree safe area. What does staff recommend, John? What's the difference of in perpetuity or a tree safe area?
It probably would last longer over time if it was in perpetuity.
Okay. So I'll add that to the tree line remain, in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. And then my one last question is, I'm not sure, ECCA usually includes this in their recommendations, but construction parking is on-site only?
Oh, yes. Did I not have that?
You didn't say that, but I wasn't sure if it was in, usually they do have it in their stipulations.
I'm sorry.
A recommendation.
It's in Ms. Hickman's email that I submitted, but I thought I wrote it. Yes, I do need to add all construction vehicles on site, no parking on the street, and no entrance into the neighborhood subdivisions.
Since we own and control the
Excuse me, Garvis, it's not appropriate, but I can ask Commissioner Burrow if you would like to call up.
My apologies.
Garvis, that's okay. Thank you.
I should have called him up before the motion, but come up, Garvis.
We've looked long and hard at those trees, our arborists, the county's arborists. The one on the pin corner, I think's going to meet its ultimate demise, but we're happy to keep things there in perpetuity. I think everything should be subject to your arborist's review and approval. I mean, if you got a tree that's ultimately irreconcilably lost, I mean, that's another thing, but we're perfectly happy to keep those intact in perpetuity, absent them being overruled by your arborist or the district commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay,
May I
and
follow- may I follow?
I'll ask the county arborists, I always have them review the landscape plan before I sign off on anything, but we'll also have a committee to review.
Well, there's some good
If there's a dead tree, you'll be able to take it out. That's not included if it's dead.
But that's what I'd like for legal to clarify, because in perpetuity has a very strong connotation to it. It almost implies that if something were to happen to a tree, then it would be replaced. So that, I would just ask for some clarification on the addition of that term.
Correct. If something happened during construction or part of that, and that's what Commissioner Gambrell added to that piece, then there would have to be a replanting of that, so.
Is that your intent or desire, Commissioner?
Well, if something is damaged with the road work that we're going to be doing, could be damaged during construction of the road realignment, but.
We're going to be tripling our protective mode around the tree root zone, which is the critical part of the tree. And when I say triple, I mean that. So the contractors, which sometimes they get happy feet on their accelerators and they tend to blow through trees, but it won't happen here. So it won't be damaged or in any way impinged upon during construction.
Okay, I appreciate you clarifying that. That's one possibility out of perhaps multiple possibilities as to what can happen to the integrity or life of a tree. Because if it does die, and if you have a stipulation on it, that stipulation runs for the life of that property. So is it the intent that 3 years from now, when we put on a term like in perpetuity for clarification from the attorney, when we put a term like in perpetuity, 5 years from now, if something were to happen to a tree, is that implying that that tree would be replaced irrespective of the reason why that tree is no longer?
That would be the idea, to maintain the buffer.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, we're augmenting that significantly. And Mr. Hayes and his group have done an excellent job with the alignment and the aesthetics, and we didn't want to deviate from that, so
Okay,
that's where we are.
as long as it's an agreed intent that would be the case, I don't have a problem with it. I just know, again, the addition of that term carries
So,
weight.
if we say in perpetuity excluding any damaged or dying, dead trees,
I kinda
with
like to
county
leave-
arborist review,
Yeah, I'd kind of like to leave it to you and the county arborist, Commissioner.
I can't say maintain the buffer. Why do we have to
what now,
maintain
I'm
the
sorry.
buffer? I mean,
of the trees, tree line? What?
yeah.
We're talking about the tree line on Gordy Parkway, not in the 40-foot buffer.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am.
As long as you agree
And,
on the
and that was a
language.
recommendation from the Architectural Control Committee as
Yes,
well.
ma'am.
Okay.
So,
And we fought it because we thought the trees were already irrevocably,
well, you needed it for parking, but
well, we've adjusted around that.
this is a very tight area. So
It is.
I have in my motion full compliance and with the recommendations from architectural control. And that is one of them that will need to remain.
Yes, ma'am.
And I guess just leave it at that the tree line on Gordy Parkway will remain intact. And if in perpetuity, but if a tree is dead in 5 years or damaged in any way, that it will be replaced. Does that
Okay,
work?
any dead or damaged tree will be replaced. Okay. As long as, like I said, it is your stipulation to negotiate, I just,
That's fine.
Okay, and then,
But in your, so are you just using the 5 years as an example, or are you using 5 years as?
I'm just using that
As an, okay, I just want clarity on that, because,
No, that's not in my motion a timeline. It's
Okay.
in perpetuity, forever.
okay. That's the language, okay. Okay.
Sorry. I was just using that as, if that happened, it would have to be replaced, but not in perpetuity.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
May I ask a question of Garvis since he's standing here?
Garvis, with the 40-foot buffer, since it's stipulated for it to remain, what does that mean for the development of the restaurant? Because now you're not going to be able to use that 36 feet, I think it was, the 36 or 40-foot buffer since it remains. What does that mean for the build-out of the development?
It impinges on it significantly, Commissioner. It's going to have to be a total reengineering of the site because we've depended upon that. And there's been a lot of talk about discarding the buffer, doing away with it. We're just minimally encroaching into parts of it. For the most part, it remains intact. But it's going to cause a reengineering and probably some considerable costs. And we're hoping the prototype, like the one that they're doing in Gainesville, is able to fit this site. It's a tight site.
Okay, and how many feet are you encroaching into the buffer?
Gosh, it ranges.
36 out of 40.
Yeah, well, I see 36 here,
37.
and I see 36 here with ECCA's comments, and I just wanted to confirm that your understanding is this the same number of feet?
Well, whatever's shown on the site plan is what we intend, the encroachment we needed.
The aerial that you had up,
Yes, ma'am?
which showed the different distances
Yes, ma'am?
to the park,
Other one. Cornelius is getting there. We've got one. There we go. Yes, sir, this one. All right, Commissioner, I think this is what you're
This.
looking for. Hope you can blow that up on your screen because I can't read it from here.
okay. You've got, the 40-foot buffer is in place at the two storage buildings. But when you get down to, you can see the tree line here and their property. Their property line is actually into the 40-foot buffer. So,
That's interesting.
but you've got another 90 feet from there that's owned by Cobb County Parks. And you've got another 475 feet closer down to Shallowford and 220 feet there.
May I get Jason to, but see, he knows these numbers back and forward. He can explain it in less than 15 seconds.
Well, my point is,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
you build into this 40-foot buffer, why couldn't you add a 40-foot buffer and acquire property from the park and still be 40 feet from the R20 zone.
We could, and that's an excellent suggestion. We've talked about it internally. We'd be more than pleased to do that. That would eliminate the need for any buffer at all. If we just buy the property from the county for fair market value, of course, we'd have to submit the appraisal and all that sort of
Yeah,
thing. We'd
and
be
that would be at your expense.
pleased to do that.
If, what?
But my concern with this conversation is it was mentioned that they were going to have to build a retention wall, which means they're going to have to totally grade out this area, which means completely removing the area. So there will be no tree save, and that's why the picture that popped up, I know Cornelius, you've been flipping through them, it doesn't reflect a retention wall there.
Right.
But a retention wall having to be constructed along here is going to totally change how they will be able to replant a buffer as well. So even if parkland was sold to them to then enable them to construct their buffer, it's still going to require removal of trees.
Could I address that?
Yeah, but isn't it going to be a retaining wall like what's in the back of the, on the same side as the storage
Yes, ma'am.
with a rail?
Right. And that's in the renderings. I can show you, but it's in the renderings.
Do you have that on the site plan?
We do.
Okay. And you'll have a buffer there, trees planted to kind of hide that?
Yeah.
From the side?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, the plantings that we're doing are, there's 13 new evergreen trees. It's significantly better than what's there now. You know, on this hill, there's just a few skinny pine trees. There's no other. This is a hill like you need to use all four, your hands and knees to get up it. It's very steep.
And all that will be reviewed by the county arborist, the committee,
Right.
and myself.
Right.
before.
There's no specimen trees. The county arborist has already been okay with what we've submitted. Our tree replacement plan exceeds
Yeah.
their code.
But you have to maintain a 40-foot buffer.
Understood. And
Adjacent to the R20.
Right. And I think it's an interesting idea. I mean, if we can essentially move the property line, then we can maintain a buffer.
Yeah, and Commissioner, if they come back, if they purchase the county property, we'd be back for rezoning. So a lot of this could be addressed.
Well, it would be an agenda item, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be zoning,
Well,
would it?
if they intend to use it beyond, I presume if it's county property, it's not zoned for this commercial use. And anytime we
It
have,
could stay in R20 buffer.
I will have to
No.
defer to staff for that. I just know when I've seen purchase of county property, the zoning is not implied in the purchase, and that has to come back for the board for rezoning.
Well-
Form of another business application.
That makes sense.
But the purpose would be to maintain a 40-foot buffer adjacent to R20
Right.
Park.
Yeah, understood.
It's a great suggestion.
It came from a constituent who's in favor of this project. And I said I would ask, but, you know,
I guess Mr. Rink.
no,
Okay.
somebody else.
Okay, so right now we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
Actually, do we need to second the revised motion? Because Commissioner Burrell revised
Oh,
from
yeah.
her original.
Oh, I never had a second on the first motion.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I did?
If she
Yeah.
adds a stipulation,
In
do
perpetuity.
we need to? We don't need to.
You can go through that process, or as long as it's the general consensus of the board as a whole.
Yeah.
The motion actually becomes the board's at that point in
Yeah, we
time.
don't,
Well, who seconded the
as
motion?
long as who has second, oh, yeah, I'm comfortable.
Are you okay
Yes,
with the
ma'am.
revised?
I'm okay.
I just want a little clarification on how we're moving forward, because there's been conversation with respect to the 40-foot buffer. Now that they can't calculate that into the development, it's going to make the space even tighter. Also, with the potential of purchasing the county's property to, I guess, to be able to utilize the 40-foot buffer, I'm just not sure if we're prepared to move forward with this one today, if the plan is to get with the county with purchasing this property. But if we do move forward today and it's approved, I just ask that they bring forth another site plan, because that 40 feet, I mean, that makes a huge difference in how this is going to end up, particularly with it being a proposal for a two-lane restaurant.
Right. Well, their proposal is to encroach on the buffer that's there, the 40 feet here.
But I thought it was staff comments to not encroach on the 40-foot buffer.
Staff comments not otherwise in conflict.
Staff comments were to maintain a 40-foot buffer, and that's what my motion said, to maintain a 40-foot buffer. If
Right.
they build on this current 40-foot buffer, they're gonna have to replace it with the park property.
Right, but we don't know at this point if that's going to happen, is the point that I'm making. We don't know that they're
No,
going to
but they have
purchase
to
that property.
maintain a 40-foot buffer, so that will be up to them to work with Michael Brantley.
It pretty much has to happen because.
For them to build it.
And it is two separate processes.
Or they reduce the size and whatever and conform to the steps.
Commissioner?
I think the request is to add to the motion that it comes back as another business for the final site plan, or?
That's fine.
Or site plan to be approved by the district.
Well, it said,
She has
yeah,
that, yeah.
that's part of my motion.
Okay, all right.
That everything will come back to the district commissioner for
I mean,
approval. But if that's the option you take with the park, then I'll request require that come back in other business for the final review.
Okay, I'll second.
But, I mean, for me, even for that, I just think that I'm just not supportive of this application. I just think that it's very intense for this corner. A double-lane drive-through, it brings about quite a bit of traffic, and I am concerned with the intersection and the traffic that will enter and exit off of this property. I just think that it's a great idea, great concept. I just think it's a little too intense for this parcel.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions? All right, I'm going to call the question. The motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Sheffield in opposition.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Commissioners, I thought we'd be done at 11, but here we are. If, please allow for a 5-minute break, and then we'll address the last application. Are there two more? That was
Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z2? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Good morning.
Good morning. Sir, if you can state your name, you can go ahead with your presentation.
My name is Sobi Bakhtor, and I bought this land to just develop it, and I saw that the areas needed to enhance the areas. The areas not really look good, and I came with a nice design and multi-family mixed use. And we came here in the hearing last, I think, April 7, and we wanted to go forward if we can. If it's not, we can find another zoning new issue.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
like I said, I'm trying to look to what is the best of the area. If you look to this area, if you go, I drove many times. It does not look good at all. And I try to say, okay, how about we can put something so that people can follow that path and we can enhance the area totally. And I hope you can approve it.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
that. Seeing that we have no one in opposition, Commissioner Sheffield, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. I had a question for Cobb DOT and also Fire. It's the same question. Can you come up, Lydia? State your name.
Ligia Floren, DOT.
Thanks, Lydia. And looking at the site plan, do you identify there to be any maneuverability challenges for this plan?
Not within the site. We just recommended a deceleration lane into the site and a traffic study for the project.
Okay. That was my only question for Lydia. Does anyone else have a Cobb DOT question? Okay. Thank you, Lydia.
You're welcome.
I think this one was 36 units.
Jeff Berg, Cop Fire.
Hi, Jeff. And the same question to you. Do you anticipate there to be any maneuverability challenges for fire trucks?
Not as it's presented. Our trucks possibly could maneuver just using the right-of-way and pull our hoses around the structure, as long as we have 150-foot access to the most remote portion of the structure.
Okay. And also, can you confirm if, and I believe this one was 36 units of residential? It is? Okay. If you can confirm if there are sprinklers that would be required within each of those units?
I couldn't at this time. We would have to review the full plan set. That would be a sprinkler plan reviewer,
Okay.
but not at this time. I couldn't.
Okay. John, would you happen to know, I know that the state code changed last year with respect to fire hydrants and sprinklers in units, but this one, with it being 36, I'm not familiar with what the state law is.
And to tell you the truth, Commissioner Sheffield, I'm not really sure. You know, Mr. Byrd would be the person to
Okay.
talk to about that issue.
Okay. That's all that I have for fire. Do you all have any questions for fire? No? Okay. Thank you. Is stormwater? Carl.
Carl Carver, Cobb County Stormwater.
Thanks, Carl. In your comments, it reads that the property slopes at the northeast corner at approximately 8%.
Correct.
And looking at this site plan, would that 8%, would that slope be on Parker Drive? I think this is oriented differently from what I reviewed last night. So if you would just identify where that location is, would that be in the parking lot?
Yeah, I think it would be more to that plan there based on the right-hand side as you look at it. That would be the northeast side.
Right, okay. Well, it was just kind of turned around a different way when I reviewed it in my notes, so I just wanted to make sure that, that I'm reviewing and understanding.
Yeah, let me get the GIS back up there and I can see if it's still oriented the same way. You have topo.
Okay, so based on the GIS, it appears that it would be near the parking spaces?
Can you turn on the topo? Sure. So it sloped up. It slopes up towards that northeast corner.
Okay,
So it's, in general, that whole slope up to that northeast corner is about 8%.
okay, all right. Also, in your comments, additional culvert analysis will be required, if you
Yes, ma'am.
recall. Is that based on this 8%? Oh, I'm sorry, is that based on the water streaming downward to the adjacent residential property?
Correct. Downstream, their downstream study and their hydrology study during the plan review, those are two road crossings with culverts that we, in addition to their 10% study, they require analysis of those culverts to make sure there's no effects there.
Okay, okay, got it. Let's see, I think that's all that I might have had for stormwater. That's all I have. Do you guys have any questions for Carl? No? Okay, thanks, Carl. John, this is a question for you regarding the Austell guidelines. In staff comments, it indicates that it does not meet the Austell guidelines. Can you share with us why it does not?
It mainly has to do with the building architecture, Commissioner Sheffield, and, we think they can get there in the future if this was approved. It's just what they're showing now, it does not meet it.
Okay.
As far as the exterior of the building.
Okay. I don't know that I have a photo or rendering of the exterior of the building. Let me just double check, sorry. Oh, there it is, I see it, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. All right. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Also to the Planning Commission and the staff, I know that this one has been continued for several months, so I'm glad we're at this point today. But the requested zoning category is currently zoned as GC, but the requested zoning categories for a PVC or planned village community, which requires 25 acres. And the subject parcel is just 1.72 acres, which is approximately a reduction of approximately 63% of what's required for the PVC category. And there are, I believe there are 7 variances that for the boards to consider to make this development viable to the applicant. And one of those variances includes reducing the parking spaces by 26 spaces, reducing the landscape buffer from 40 feet to 20 feet, and waiving the 500 square foot per dwelling unit of open space, and also another variance to allow access to a local road, and several other variances that were requested. In reviewing the arborist comments, the site does not appear to satisfy the minimum parking lot tree standards, which leads me to believe that there may be an 8th variance requested at some point. But I'm always concerned and believe when there are numerous variances, it signals that the proposed development is not a right fit for the property. And I can appreciate your desire in wanting to build or bring retail to the area, and I do agree with you that it is much needed and it can use a little bit of attention on that corner. But while PVC is allowed in the NAC category, the use of this project, unfortunately, is not a good fit for this proposed location. The project site and scale do not adhere to the NAC's goal of ensuring neighborhood compatibility and providing adequate buffering to protect the stability of surrounding residential neighborhoods. And this analysis is evidenced by the numerous variances required by the proposal. So to that end, I support staff recommendation of denial, and I am prepared to make a motion, Madam Chair. I make a motion to deny Z2 of 2023.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? I just want to reiterate Commissioner Sheffield's remarks from driving up and down this street. I appreciate your interest in this parcel and what you're trying to do here. I don't know if there's another zoning category that's a better fit than PVC. I remember another zoning case in the past where there was similar discussion because I think for the mixed-use component, it required a PVC, but it didn't have the requisite acreage, but there was just some consideration of that desirability. But there are a lot of other variances here. Perhaps if you were to look at how you can reduce the number of units or some other aspect of it, it could really help to, I think, jumpstart some redevelopment in that area, which is needed. But I do agree with the commissioner's comments that what we see here today does look a bit intense. Yeah. Commissioner Richardson.
Question, if there is interest in this developer looking at other ways to approach this parcel, is there interest in a denial without prejudice?
I mean, there's interest. Oh, sorry. There's interest, but I am concerned with the PVC category. It requires 25%, and this is just under 2 acres. So I don't know if there would be consideration from the applicant to possibly develop a retail-only location, but obviously, you know, that has to go through the analysis with staff to even see if that would be viable as well. But even if he scaled down, because there's only 36 residential units, so, you know, scaling that down, it's the PVC category is where I'm getting
Right, I
held
just
up.
meant more so for him to be able to come back with
Pardon?
for him to come back, not with PVC, but within the 6 months period if there's something else for this
Okay.
parcel.
Okay.
But I don't,
Okay.
question.
Okay. No, that's a good idea. I'll have him to come up. Sir? Yeah. Thank you. In your earlier comments, you mentioned that, I thought you mentioned that if it didn't work, then there was something else that you would consider, and you also mentioned that you had purchased the property, but I don't know if the purchase had already occurred or if the purchase was contingent upon our zoning decision today. But if the former and you already own the property, is there consideration on your part to bring forward a different plan for consideration?
Thank you all for that. But yes, for sure, we will find something else. But my desire to, like I said in the previous, that I wanted to put something stylish, which can people follow.
Absolutely.
But if it's not going to be, I was trying to look to the area if anyone can sell land or property around so we can expand the acreage, and we will have that. But until now, there is nothing on sale at that time. But yes, I bought it I think a year ago or so.
Okay.
Normally, I buy stuff, and after this, leave it, and after this, I think about to develop it. And this is the first time, by the way, I develop in Cobb County, so I think this is my first experience here. My thought is, if it did not go through that zoning, I will go with actual zoning, which neighborhood. It is GC, which neighborhoods like a plaza, is that is right? Right now, that's what is zoned now. So I will not. I think I will try to develop a nice plaza, or once again, I have to talk with my architects and the civil engineer and all that to see if that is, number one, is that is needed in the area. That's why I went with the first zone, because I know that it is very needed. Actually, it's needed across entire Georgia now. It's very desirable now for housing and all that. But now I have to go with the architect and civil and the marketing and all that to see if it's needed. For sure, I will try to do that. But I will not, for sure, put money for something is not needed. It will not be good investment decision to anyway. So we'll see. I don't know.
Okay.
What's your recommendation? I just
No, I appreciate it.
You are in that. You're doing that every day, so you know better than me, I'm sure, in this area. What's your recommendation?
We appreciate that, and it sounds like you had a plan B in mind already. So I'll just direct this question to legal. There is a motion on the floor to deny, and there's also a second. But just based on his comments and his thought to develop the property, can we just, I guess, either hold it? I don't know.
Not for PVC, can it come back under something else?
Right. We're always
The
putting
board's
Bill
really
on
getting
the
very
spot.
speculative at this point in time. There's an application that's before you.
Right, I understand.
And there's a motion that's on the floor. You could either do it as denial with prejudice, which would require 12 months for him to come back, or without prejudice, and then come back in 6 months. So, I mean, otherwise, it's staff time already invested, a lot of time into this
I
particular
understand.
application, as well as the BOC.
With prejudice is 6 months?
Without.
But, go ahead.
Oh, there is one more option that we could offer the applicant.
Yeah.
If he wants to ask the board to withdraw this without prejudice, there would be no prejudice, period.
Okay.
Yeah, he
And then he
wouldn't
can
have
come
to
back whenever he finds
come
it.
That's what I
back at
thought. I
all.
never heard of the 6 months.
What is that? I'm so sorry.
Well, if they reject this, then you can't come back for 12 months. If they reject this without prejudice, you can't come back at 6 months. But if you ask the board to withdraw your case without prejudice, then you can come back immediately.
Okay. I can withdraw the case.
So
then.
You have to say without prejudice.
It's easy to say.
Withdraw your motion.
Right, right. Are we ready? Okay.
That's a good idea.
You can modify the motion?
Or would I need to withdraw?
Well, let's just clarify. The applicant is asking the board to withdraw his case without prejudice. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I do.
Well, there's a pending motion to deny it, so it's up to the board what to do.
I think by consensus, you can modify it, or you
Would you guys be okay with? Okay, withdrawn, okay. All right, fantastic.
Withdraw it without prejudice.
So you're going to be amending your motion to allow him to withdraw without prejudice?
Thank you. I am,
Poor Moni.
I make a motion to withdraw my motion to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice.
Thank you.
I will second as amended.
all right. Okay. Any discussion? Call the question. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wait a minute.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's to withdraw the motion. Now she needs to make a
You need to
motion
add
to
another
actually do
motion,
it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
We never, she's had to do another motion.
Make a motion to withdraw.
Without prejudice.
Withdrawal of Z2.
Okay. All right. I make a motion to accept the applicant's proposal to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
Any discussion? I do have a question for you, John. If someone has a mixed-use development, is there a less intense zoning category than PVC?
Yes, he could apply for UVC, or he could just apply for different categories, like,
Yes.
say RMA and NRC, and
I've
divide
seen
it
that.
out. by
Okay.
district.
And so I don't know if the applicant heard that just now, but there are other zoning categories that you can consider to allow mixed use that wouldn't require that 25-acre minimum. I would just ask that you confer with our staff so you can understand what your options are. You're welcome. Okay, do we have any other comments or questions? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. John, do we have any other matters on today's agenda? Okay.
Yeah, we got District 1. Finally, Kelly gets one. One or two here. I am too. I thought I had that. You had it worse.
All right, next case is other business item number 3 of 2023, which is to consider amending the site plan for Mills Veterinary Property and Rehabilitation Center regarding rezoning application Z9 of 2020 for property located on the west side of North Cobb Parkway, south of 3rd Army Road in Land Lot 2 of the 20th District. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 3? Let the record show there's one person opposed to other business item number 3. Would the applicant and the opposition please come forward to be sworn in?
Ma'am, you can begin with it.
Hi.
Hello.
So my name is Dr. Michelle Mills. I am a veterinarian. I've been practicing for almost 11 years now as a veterinarian. I've been in veterinary medicine for 22 years now. I first owned Mills Veterinary Services in June 2017, so 6 years now. I had a 7-year lease. My lease will be up in about a little over a year and a half. So I bought this property hoping to be able to move my existing practice to that property. We have 3 doctors currently and only 3 exam rooms. So we need more exam rooms and more space to be able to provide the services that we're providing. And in addition, we are adding a rehabilitation center because a lot of my clients have to drive, a 50-minute drive to have these services. So we are going to add those services to our practice so that local residents can use those services. I think that's it.
Okay. This is your presentation, so
Okay.
don't feel
Okay.
any pressure to say more or less than what you have prepared. And if we have any questions, we can always call you back up.
Okay. One last thing. So we are the only family-owned animal hospital, animal clinic in our area, at least in a 10-mile radius, definitely in Ackworth. All the other clinics are corporate-owned. That's it. So supporting small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I leave now? Do you have
Is there anyone else here in support of the application? Okay, we'll now hear from opposition. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think it's still morning. My name is Teresa Stendall, 5850 Autry Church Road for the last 48 years. Just to preface my comments, it's not opposition. It's things that I think have not been addressed, particularly in staff comments. With no disrespect to staff, there are just too many items in staff comments that are left to be determined at plan review. And once you get to the plan review stage, there's no public comment, there's no public review. Anything that you think you might have gotten at the end may or may not occur. And that's been something, for my 25 years of involvement in the community, that it's critically important that it happen at this stage of the zoning process, not after the fact.
Okay.
We don't like surprises. We're too small an area in the Lake Allatoona corridor to be surprised. But several of the things that, in addressing some of the staff comments, and I do know there was a revised site plan relative to sewer allocation, which is a huge challenge in our area. But several of the things that really stood out was all of the other Cobb Parkway fronting businesses have an acceleration and a decel lane. Cobb Parkway is a state 4-lane divided. We get hit with Bartow County and Paulding County traffic every single day, 24/7. It does not stop. And this particular parcel that Dr. Mills has purchased is equidistant between the red light intersection at Dabbs Bridge and Cedar Crest. So when she relocates across the highway from where she currently is, if you don't live there, you don't really, I guess, get impacted by it. But if she is servicing particularly clients on Cedar Crest, Governor's Club, Bentwater, that type of thing, they are no longer going to have access to the traffic signal at Autry Church and Cobb Parkway. They have to go up to the Dabbs Bridge, 3rd Army Road, and do a U-turn. We have currently under construction over 500 residential units in Bartow County, about 1.5 miles north. That's just going to exacerbate the current problem that we have with the Paulding County traffic coming down Dabbs Bridge that has no yield sign, no turn on red, and you're fighting for your life every time you make that U-turn. We have had too many accidents there over the years, and GDOT has yet to do anything substantial to change that. In the last 20 years, the few rezonings that we have had within the Lake Allatoona corridor along Cobb Parkway have been approved site plan and use specific, with all changes coming back to the BOC. Again, we don't like surprises. And while minor modifications are allowable for certain categories, it's been something that Commissioner Gorham started years ago, and it has worked well for our community. And we would really prefer that continue to be the standard for us. The Z9, which this was predicated on, did not have any limited uses. However, it was using the existing structure, and Dr. Mills' intent is to do a tear-down rebuild. So I did kind of question, is it really an other business item, or was it just a rezoning? But the NRC is the appropriate zoning for this particular parcel, as is all of them along the parkway. The other question that I posed to zoning, and we're probably going to continue to differ on this, is whether or not does this fall within the category of an animal hospital? If so, it's not allowable in NRC. Therefore, it is allowable with special exceptions, the special exceptions being boarding and an increased buffer. This property, as all properties along Cobb Parkway, do front residential parcels of land. And so any increase of buffer is an added bonus to those residential uses that are anticipated to occur in the future. Little confusion on, is it 5,300 square feet for the new facility? Is it 5,481? There were revised Cobb County Water and Sewer comments. I think the last was it's 5,481, but I didn't note that on the site plan, so I wasn't really sure. We do believe that this application should meet at a minimum the same stipulations and architectural guidelines as Z24 of 2022. We do request respectfully that although the architectural renderings are terrific, but we would request four-sided brick or stacked stone. That is what the other developments along the parkway have been stipulated for. Even Cam's Auto Repair is four-sided brick. We want to keep that going. The only other question that came to mind had to do with boarding. In Dr. Mills' letter of reference, she said that they would be offering short-term boarding. That's not clearly defined, and my concern would be that overnight boarding has the potential to change the expectation of what is being offered by a veterinary service. So again, you get into that, is it animal hospital, is it veterinary? I think the jury between myself and zoning is still out on that, but those are the questions that I would pose to the board. Let's see. Just remembering that every new development, particularly in our short corridor up there, sets a new precedent, and we want everyone to be treated the same. We want conformity. It's taken 20-plus years to have a new building coming out of the ground. But whatever comes out is critically important to our community. There's going to be very little growth because we're so small up there. But what growth we have, we want it to be appropriate, we want it to be conforming, and we want to be pleasing to the county at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I don't believe there's anyone else in opposition. So with that, Commissioner, I'll turn it over. Excuse me, before I do that, let me get staff's recommendation.
Madam Chair and Board, the staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the request, subject to the revised other business item number 3 documents that were emailed to the Board of Commissioners on April 13th, which includes revised staff comments for site plan review, Cobb DOT, and the Fire Department, subject to the April 10th, 2023 site plan that's in that packet, and all previous conditions to remain in effect that are not in conflict with this proposal.
Thank you, John. Commissioner, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The first thing I'd like to address is the comment that Ms. Stendal brought up about Dabbs Bridge and Third Avenue Road. That is one of our most dangerous intersections in Cobb County. But this board, at our last meeting, Drew Ressler and his DOT for federal funds. This is one of the intersections that we will be studying. So hopefully that is some good news for the folks up there. It's going to be a huge project, but maybe we can start addressing some of those concerns up there. I do have many issues with this application, and it does go back to all applicants being treated equally up in this area. I had not received this site plan until Thursday. So I had no knowledge of it. So I had actually spoke with Mr. Peterson on Wednesday after 12 o'clock and said I wanted this held because I had not received it by the 12 o'clock deadline. The application that we all received on the 13th, if you notice, there is no county date stamp on the application for other business. There is also no date stamp nor signature nor date on the proposed letter of stipulations that Dr. Mills has supposedly included with her application. The site plan is also not date stamped. So I truly kind of question how it missed that process of our application and review process. As Ms. Stendal pointed out, we do have design standards that we've held other applicants to four-sided brick. On the Z24, we did allow it to go to three-sided, but this clearly does not show that. We have also been site plan specific, and while DOT, the question on the decel or the decel lane is there, in DOT comments, in the observations, it is stated a deceleration lane would be required for this development based on GDOT standards using standard ITE rates, and that comes right out of staff's comments. So for the site plan to not show that decel lane, when we always approve things site plan specific, I have concerns about this moving forward today. The site plan also does not have a landscape buffer plan on it, which again is critical when we're going to get adjacent to residential. In staff comments, under the arborist, It is clearly stated that the site plan submitted does not satisfy the parking lot tree requirements of the Cobb County Tree Ordinance. There is also a comment here, which kind of goes back to the retaining wall question on Commissioner Burrows, is that they're proposing a retaining wall within the 20-foot landscape buffer, and that's going to severely limit the amount of landscaping they will then be able to plant. It then also comes to the question of, does this truly fall under the NRC zoning category, or does it require a special use? So I pulled up the zoning code, and the NRC code is section 134-213. And if you go to special exception uses, it does have animal hospital, and it also says boarding kennels for indoor. However, it also states that it must be a 35-foot buffer, not the 20-foot buffer that the applicant is proposing. So no one in the community is opposed to having this animal clinic there. I would just like to see the application be brought back in conformity with code, meeting the standards that we've held in that area to this point. I did have a meeting with the applicant and staff several months ago and expressed these concerns, but had not heard anything back until what was presented to me on the 13th.
Okay.
So I will
So-
open that up for discussion.
Is it your desire to continue, or since they've presented, to hold this matter?
I would like to hold this matter because, again, I'm not, it's too incomplete to have a vote taken today.
Okay.
But I would like to hear your concerns as well.
Yeah, well, for the applicant, I think that provides some hope, right, for us not to vote on it and to deny. The commissioner has expressed her concerns, but also a willingness to work with you by holding it as opposed to us making a determination. And she's made it very clear some things that can be addressed to get her consideration for approval. So I'm in support of that. I certainly can see, you know, the benefit to us supporting, you know, small business owners and people that want to invest in our county. And there's also interest in protecting this area of the county, as was shared by the residents. So I'm in full support. I'm in full support of Commissioner Gamble's recommendation to hold it. I saw your hand up, Commissioner Richardson.
I was just going to make a similar statement that I am in support of holding this.
Commissioner Sheffield?
Just want clarification, with us holding, are we anticipating a new plan, a site plan, and those items that you pointed out to address?
Yes, because I have been very consistent that, you know, with development and site plans that they have to meet code. So my desire would be for the applicant to bring back a site plan that is done to code, meeting all the requirements, showing the decel lane, et cetera, for us to approve. So with that, I would like to ask the applicant to come back forward.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, please. Please, ma'am, if you could speak up here, please. Thank you.
I was wondering if my engineer can speak about the decel lane, as he's been in communication with, about that. Is that okay?
I'm not ready to discuss the decel lane because we have the issue of getting your site plan in conformance with with the zoning code right now. So we need to do that. And as far as, you know, I'm glad your engineer has spoken with GDOT, but again, every single development that has gone up in that corridor has had a decel and an XL lane. So I highly doubt that GDOT is going to remove that stipulation, given your use is more intense than the Z24 that was referenced that this board approved a couple years ago that had a lower intensity use, and they're required to do that as well. So I am not, the decel lane is the least of the worries right now.
Okay.
So my question to you is, though, I know we met several months ago, and again, I had not heard back from you. I understand you were working with staff. Those conversations were never communicated to me. Okay. So my question is, given what code says, do you think you can have your site plan redrawn and everything brought into compliance within 30 days, or do you need 60 or 90 days?
Probably 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
While you're here, ma'am, I just want to acknowledge, this is an intimidating process to come up
Yes.
here for zoning. And you're a small business owner, as you shared. I know the intimidation I've had just as a resident coming to speak for public comment, let alone to put my business aspirations out there for consideration and to be introduced to this process. I want to commend you for seeing the opportunity and coming here today.
Thank you.
The commissioner certainly has a lot of things that she desires to see that are standard. Our support for small businesses is also standard for us. And I just want to be able to communicate that.
Thank you.
We certainly want to make sure, again, that things are done in a way that comports with the community's interests. They've done a lot of work to protect the community, as Teresa has shared, and Commissioner Gamble's a steward of that as being the commissioner. We don't want you to be discouraged.
Okay.
Okay? So I appreciate you coming up here and having your engineer involved, and I'm hoping, if 30 days, if you don't know, because this is a new process, and she's giving you the option of 60 or 90, there's no need for you to provide a constraint on something that you may not be aware of. When I'm hearing the commissioner is willing to provide you some latitude to work those things out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to reiterate, 30 days, is that comfortable for you, or
I
do you
think
need more
so.
time?
I think so. The site plan that was put up earlier is not the site plan that we've recently submitted. That one was the first one before we knew about the sewer limitation. So I think it is 5461 square foot site plan. Do you guys have that?
We may, as the commissioner said, we may have received it after the deadline that we do typically have, which is the Wednesday prior. She can speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Commissioner?
So I know my assistant Ryan did print out the new information, and this is what is in our book, but this is also when I noticed there was no date stamp on this, nor the rest of the information, the new application, because the application that is in my book was not the original application that Dr. Mills had filled out. And again, that's when I noticed it hadn't been date stamped and gone through the typical process.
Okay.
So that is also concerning that, again, we might not be looking at everything, but I know the site plan that was in my packet, which was sent by staff on April 13th, again, the rear setback does not meet code.
Okay. Just for a point of process sake, can you provide under what circumstances an applicant might submit material and that not be stamped prior to it coming before the board?
Well, the applicant is required to submit any revised plans or letters by the Wednesday at noon before this hearing.
Okay.
So that would have been April 11th. I believe.
Okay.
No, that would have been April 12th.
Okay, prior to the date that the applicant
So
has referred
all the
to.
information that was sent to the board last Thursday, which included the revised site plan, the letter, and the revised comments, was submitted to me by Dr. Mills on Monday, the 10th.
Okay.
And it was sent via email, so I did not date stamp it.
You did not, okay. And that's the thing. So if you might, that's not then on the applicant if you receive something via email and there isn't a physical timestamp. That's just maybe an administrative process we haven't shored up if somebody sends something electronically versus walking in and getting it stamped. Don't let me put words in your mouth. I'm just trying, there's been a lot of conversation around that stamp, and it's making it seem as if there's something occurred that should not have, almost a malintent, or I just want to clarify, is this a benign thing, or is this something we can address? But I feel like it should be addressed because there's been some discussion around that.
Okay, we'll get it stamped.
And, well, I'm just asking, in the future, are we looking at, let me back up. To what extent should we rely on that stamp? If we receive something from staff, should it be implied that it was received on time?
Correct. And, as far as the stamp goes, I think you need to rely on it more if you get revised plans over and over and over and over. In this case, there was two plans, the original plan and this plan.
Okay. So just help us then as far as process. I'm not trying to put anything on you. I don't have any criticism of the process. I'm just trying to understand it as we've had, to me, a little bit of charged communication with respect to it. So I'm just trying to understand what that's about.
And I also apologize for not understanding the process. I had been talking with John. I didn't realize, I thought he was going to be sending everything to you. So you had mentioned you have not heard from me. I did not realize I was supposed to be directly contacting you. I misunderstood at our last meeting, and I thought he was my point of contact this whole time. So everything, all communications have been with him.
Okay.
And I did ask, do I need to bring this information in or can I email it? He said it's okay to email.
Okay. Okay. And every commissioner has their interest in a certain way they do things. I think Commissioner Gamble is making it clear what her interests are.
Yeah, now I know. I'm sorry, I didn't know before.
Okay.
No, and I understand that, but where we get caught is, again, in the stip letter, on the stipulation letter that she sent, that John included in the email. There's no date. There's no date on the stipulation letter. So, again, how are we going to potentially use that to go forward with zoning? That's why staff is typically date stamp things, because that's also kind of a check and balance to verify which is the same. So that is where, to me, this was handled very uniquely.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing from John with email, they don't necessarily do that, but it may be helpful as you have other correspondence that you provide, that you do have a date on it, so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we can just keep track of the sequence of when that's received. Yeah. Okay, Commissioner.
And we truly are nice people, office days, but everything that we discuss here, these are legal documents.
Right.
And they get submitted into the record, and there's standing in case law that goes behind these things. So that is why the standard is high when it comes to these proceedings.
Yeah, I understand.
But it looks like we may have to shore up what our expectations are, because I'm not hearing that we have a standard of stamping things. So it would just be helpful if we have a standard of stamping electronic things, excuse me, because how do you stamp an email? We'll work that out outside of this somehow, some way. But just in the future, this would be helpful to date it.
Okay.
Just one thing,
Commissioner.
I know that standing up there is unnerving, but you did a fantastic job today.
Thank you.
Yes.
You did a fantastic job.
We want you to be encouraged. Again, it's a blessing to us that you would want to invest here, especially when you're here and you're proximate to another county. So you've made a decision to invest here. So I appreciate us having this
Yeah,
conversation.
it's my home, so that's why I wanted to be in Cobb County.
Receive that.
And the renderings are beautiful.
Yeah. Commissioner,
Okay, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to hold OB 3 2023 until the May 16th, 2023 hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
is there any discussion? We'll call the question. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is other business item number 13 of 2023, which is to consider a reduction of public road frontage from 50 feet to 20 feet and a rear setback variance from 35 feet to 24 feet for Edward M. Glancy Jr. The property is located on the east end of Lakeside Court, east of Lake Drive, and land lot 35 of the 20th District. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 13? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. My name is Edward Michael Glancy, Jr. My wife Laura and I live at 5447 Lakeside Court in Ackworth. We purchased the property April 30th of 2020. We're here today to request that our non-conforming lot be officially recognized in public record. In addition, we are seeking a rear setback variance in support of new construction that is planned for the property. concerning the nonconformity of our lot was created in 1960 and has roughly 20 feet of cul-de-sac road frontage. I was not aware that that was a code until we submitted to Cobb County zoning some time ago. The current code, as I understand it, prescribes a 50-foot road frontage requirement for a cul-de-sac, according to, it's my understanding that we were sort of grandfathered in because the lot was created before the code was created. Though I don't know that for certain, I was just told that. Concerning our variance request, we are seeking a rear setback variance that allows for a reduction in rear setback from 35 feet to 25 feet. The variance request relates to the nonconformity of our lot. Being on a cul-de-sac, our lot is pie-shaped with a very narrow line at the front, lot line at the front, and a much wider lot line at the rear. We needed to place our soon-to-be-built home closer to the rear of the lot line in order for it to fit properly and maintain a code-required 10-foot buffer from our neighbors to the north and south. Both of our neighbors have signed an affidavit in support of our request. In fact, all of our neighbors have been very supportive of our intent to build, and we're grateful for that part of our community. So that's what I'm here for today, and if we could, you can see how narrow it is at the front. At one time, I think in 1960, Lot 20 was actually, it incorporated the lower, you're actually looking at, what's outlined is the north part of Lot 20. Right below that was the south part of Lot 20, and again, I wasn't even alive during that time, but apparently they split it in two, and that's where we are. And then if you could go to, if somebody's in control of these documents, there's the one that, that shows our site plan. I think it's on, not that one. There should be one more. Yeah, that's it. So that rear setback variance, it's a 35 foot as I understand it. Nearly the entire house fits inside. We're good on it, but that back corner of it infringes just a little bit. So that's what brought Laura and I here before the board today, and we respectfully request your consideration.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Again, I don't believe there was anyone here in opposition. Okay, not here or seeing anyone. John, what is staff's recommendation?
Madam Chair and Board, the staff would recommend the Board approve the request, subject to the site plan received February 9th, 2023, subject to the stormwater management comments contained in the other business packet, subject to the site plan review comments contained in the other business packet, and lastly, subject to the fire department comments contained in the other business packet.
All right, thank you, John. Commissioner?
Thank you. And Mr. Glancy, you can have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, this application has brought about many questions, and I've spent many hours with staff asking questions. And from asking questions with staff, I then ended up engaging with the Corps of Engineers because I was concerned with some of the answers I was given. But if you go back to the GIS from 1999, the tax assessor had this parcel at a 0.3 acres. And for this application, it jumped to 0.68. So my first question was, how could the property double in size? So from there, I had conversations with John Peterson and then also Stephen White. And CP, if you can pull, I have some slides to help, because again, this is confusing. So next one. Next one. There we go. So I was sent this site plan from staff to kind of help explain to me how we got to the 0.68 acres. However, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, it says survey for Robert C. Kennedy. So staff was not looking at the site plan for Glancy. Glancy's property is actually where it says the remainder of Lot 20. That is actually his property, not the parcel that shows the one-story block on it. I confirmed this by looking at the Department of Health application, because in that application, Mr. Glancy used the 311 and the 255 as his lot measurements, not those that are reflected on what is known as the Kennedy property on here. So from there, I went and had continued conversations with staff. And CP, if you can go to the one that is the disposition one. Nope, next one. So, okay, back up one, please. Thank you. So this is a map that I received from the Corps of Engineers. You can clearly see where their lines are shown on their map that is recorded. And this was recorded in 1971, was the last time that the Corps did moving of property lines. A conversation was had that Mr. Glancy's property increased in size because of disposition of land. The Corps used to do disposition of land, but that is not a practice that they are currently doing now. However, the disposal of land that they had done for this area is not along the Glancy property line. It is actually along Peter Bright's, and we heard his case back a couple years ago that was also ended up in a property line dispute, and then also against the property that is at the southern side. So this parcel has never been disposed of or given additional land by the Corps of Engineers. So with that, there are no neighbors here in opposition, and none of the neighbors are opposed to Mr. Glancy improving his property. What they are opposed to is the fact that staff is not making them go through the same process that they had to go through when they went to make changes on their property, which was going to the Corps of Engineers first to verify lot lines and property boundaries prior to beginning a land disturbance permit. I found it interesting that staff comments did state that a new boundary would be required, but it was before the CO was issued. Again, if we allow construction to begin before the lot line boundaries are resolved, they could be building onto someone else's property. So with that, and that's just kind of scratching the surface, I hope I've given enough explanation here. I would like to hold this case for at least 90 days, because I do think it's going to take that long to work with the Corps of Engineers to ensure that the boundary lines that Mr. Glancy claim are his are in alignment with what the Corps has. Because like I said, the original plat that the county had on file was from 1951. The county was not able to give me the plat from 1971 where lot line shifts were done by the Corps. So I don't know why we can't find that one on record, but this needs to be resolved between the Corps of Engineers and Mr. Glancy before it's considered by our board.
Okay, I want to defer to our county attorney and legal with respect to this. You know, when things come before us for zoning, there's some deference that we do have towards our staff, and also there's that survey. So if you can help us understand this, please.
Correct, and I don't know the distinction between, I mean, I think I recall the particular case that Commissioner Gambrell was referencing, just right around the corner from this one, or just on the same. I think I recognized it when we were looking at it on the cul-de-sac. And I don't know the distinction between why staff would look back at the Corps at that point in time, but I imagine it goes back to, there's components regarding, this is all on sewer as well, right?
No.
No, it's on septic.
It's on septic, so it plays out into the septic and how much footage they have to have?
Right, and interestingly enough, I'm sorry to cut you off,
No.
but where the additional property has come into play is where they need to put their septic. The Corps in the past had allowed homeowners to place the septic on the Corps property with the understanding that if you redeveloped or changed your property, it was the property owner's requirement to pull it back onto their own parcel. And that was part of the issue with the other case that we had considered a couple years ago now. So that's where this, again, got interesting to me, that it doubled in size, because this is also where he needs to be able to do his septic.
And I would just defer to the zoning commissioner regarding how they did this analysis. This is the first time I've looked at this.
And, you know, as far as what we're discussing now, what's on the screen, you know, it's important to note, you see in one corner, D09-1-3. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
And then if you go directly 400 feet south, you have D09-1-2.
Okay.
Those monuments are on the ground today, and I'm confident none of the applicant's improvements are on that property. I've done my own research on this, and I think the subdivision plat from 1951 was misscaled when it was drawn, because
I'm sorry?
it was misscaled when it was drawn, because there's actually a 50 to 75-foot property gore all around the subdivision. So over the years, the original developer has given property back to the owners, and that's what this second tract is on Mr. Glancy's property. It's a gore that was created by the subdivision. And Mr. Glancy did walk this line between D09-13 and D09-12, and it's a straight line. There's no jogs in it. So all the discrepancies are inside that line.
Oh, okay.
So what the Corps owns is what the Corps owns. None of his property is on the Corps property.
Okay, thank you, John. The applicant, okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
I will send this to the clerk for the record. I just received an email at 10:08 this morning back from the realty specialist that I've been working with at the U.S. Corps of Engineers. I had sent them this information that we are currently looking at, including the plat and boundary lines that Mr. Glancy has submitted with his application. And I'll read the email directly. It does look like the lot has some discrepancies. All of our data shows the line being straight, just like what I sent you, which goes back to what CP is showing us here. I can provide the survey data, transverse comps that can be used to verify the property line. He is sending this over to his property line ranger to get those, and then they will be getting back with me. So the Corps of Engineers does have concerns with what has been submitted and how staff is reviewing it.
Okay. The applicant has some documentation too. Can he present that, please, to the board? For our applicant, please approach him.
Thank you. And
Just give you.
just wait till you get the microphone.
Yes, please.
Just wait till you get into the microphone, please start talking.
Thank you. I was, again, the Kennedy Trust owns the property next to me. And this is kind of how I learned about a lot of this information. Robert Kennedy bought this property, I think, in 1984. He understood that there was this discrepancy. His son, Alan, who's a property developer here in Atlanta, helped me to understand it in greater detail. Alan sent to me documentation, which I'm happy to provide, but they are quitclaim deeds, and I believe John may be familiar with this, but they're all dated the 19th of August, 1977, and therefore, for my property, the Kennedy Trust, a lot of different lots, and John and I have talked about this, a lot of them on August 19th, 1977, and then multiple other ones on days very near to that date. And so my understanding was that when the Corps did reassess their boundary lines in the 1970s, that's when they did this quitclaim to the developer. And the developer deeded this, and these are the Cobb County deeds for my property and for 3 other properties that are adjacent to mine that are on that line. So all of that was recorded in Cobb County's records, and that I've reviewed with the Corps every year exactly where their lines are. We have been to their markers. The stakes, I know exactly where they are. That line, and speaking with the other owners, that line hasn't moved since 1977. So one of the other owners is here in support for us, and his mother owned that property at the time that the Corps deeded, or however they gave land to those property owners.
I guess, but what my concern is while there are these deeds, it's not recorded with the federal government. And it is my understanding that there is no adverse possession against the federal government. So while these deeds have been exchanged between property owners, it's not recorded with the federal government, and this is federal government land.
Who does that liability fall on?
To me, it needs to be resolved between Mr. Glancy and the U.S. Corps of Engineers. That's why I want this held, to get that resolved before we take action.
I hear you. I guess I respectfully, I agree and I disagree. I think we both agree that this is an issue for the applicant and the federal government. And we've had other types of zoning where there was another governing body that was involved in that matter, where things needed to be addressed between the applicant and another governing body. But we have our own staff telling us from their review that this is all within the appropriate purview of this property owner. And I feel if we get this wrong, then our applicant here, you assume the risk. And so I have a very difficult time waiting 90 days for us to do due diligence on another governing body that the applicant has been conferring with that is outside of the consideration of our staff. And I know you've received an email, but we're not seeing these assertions in writing from the governing body. I don't want to take anything away from your diligent investigation of matters, but I also feel that it's quite onerous to put that conjecture on the applicant to wait 90 days to move forward with their property when they've already had to wait to come before us for zoning, especially when he assumes the risk. If the federal government cannot have adverse possession as a claim against them, then there is a path forward if our staff has missed something, that the federal government will make sure that their property is protected. But I don't know why we need to sit here and act as their advocate when they're fully aware of this property and their own property, and they have to do their due diligence to protect their property. I'm sorry.
Well, and all that came about because I was asking questions and the responses I was getting from staff didn't make sense. In that regard, I am fully ready to make a motion to deny this other business item, because if this applicant has 0.68 acres, as he claims, there is no hardship to give variances. I mean, essentially, he is trying to build more than what this property can hold. So if we don't want to hold this for 90 days, I'm more than glad to deny it and allow him to build to, again, code, just like we've held all these other applicants to, with setbacks, and proceed from there. So that is why I was going to give the opportunity for him to resolve this and get this signed off. And again, staff has required other homeowners to go to the Corps before they would sign off on permits. So why this applicant was being treated differently is their concern. Are they here today to oppose it based on that? No, because again, they're not opposed to him improving his home, but they don't understand why he's not being made to go through the same steps that they went through.
Are we, I would ask staff, have we allowed this to move forward in a way that's inconsistent with practices for zoning?
No, we have not, Commissioner, and like Commissioner Gamble says, you know, we've spent some time talking about this. And I spent a few hours over in the deed room doing research on this, and Mr. Glancy has walked the line. He sent me a bunch of pictures of the monuments out there, and the numbers on these monuments match these numbers that are shown on your screen right now. That's why I'm confident it's okay. It's just this 1951 subdivision plat was smaller than what these boundaries actually are, so there's a property gore that goes around it. And that's why in 1977, they deeded to 5 different property owners portions of property behind each lot. And Mr. Grant deeded other portions in the 80s to other property owners. That's why when you go back to the tax map, it looks kind of jagged, but it's because there's a property gore around the perimeter of the original subdivision.
What can this board reasonably rely on to understand the property, the proper property boundary?
Okay, and I'll support Commissioner Gamble getting confirmation from the Corps of Engineers, but I think we can get that in probably 30 days instead of 90 days.
Yeah, I'm very concerned waiting another 3 months for those.
Can I ask a question of the applicant? The documents that you were holding up, are any of those verification from the Corps of Engineers?
No, they're off of Cobb County's website.
Okay.
The Cobb, yeah.
And just, this is what staff included with the variance application, because originally this applicant had filed for a variance application to be heard by the variance board. If you notice, on the map that staff included in here, there is no jut out here that they're now claiming is here. So this is what started me asking questions.
Understood. If there is information that's you can clarify or staff can clarify to give us the ability to weigh Commissioner Gamble's concerns in a more timely manner, that would be my request, John, and I don't know how to state that in a form of a condition that the clerk can note, but I think it's very difficult for us to make some insinuations without the benefit of having something articulated, something documented from these bodies, and to make somebody wait for a quarter of a year for that. Is there a way to hold it until a shorter amount of time where you can get that? Yes?
Well, you know, the motion on the floor is to hold it for 90 days to get confirmation from the Corps of Engineers regarding this property boundary on the east property line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like the confirmation can come sooner than that.
I would like to add have a substitute motion that we hold this matter for a lesser amount of time, and I'm looking to you to help provide language for what is a reasonable amount of time. I'm sorry. If you've got to speak to the mic, Commissioner.
I think there's interest in reducing that time.
Okay.
I think one of the district commissioners interested in making that commentary.
Okay, go ahead, please.
May I just,
Let Commissioner Gamble go.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let Commissioner Gamble go ahead, and then you can, please.
So the whole part of my turning this over to the board was for discussion to see if 90 days or if you felt something else. So again, this is how we're getting there. I would be open to changing my motion based on the discussion we're
That's
having.
good, because I heard you say if you didn't get 90 days, then you would just move to deny. So if you're open for discussion, let's articulate that.
My motion to deny was based on the fact that you didn't want another government agency weighing in on this. So that is when I let the board know, since we're in a discussion phase, that if the board doesn't want to have another governmental agency weigh in, then I would be ready to make a substitute motion to just deny.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I would like to hear from other commissioners
Yeah.
to see if there is support for us reducing the window of time for consideration on this other business application.
I do support that, but I did have a follow-up question for the commissioner. I wanted to know if the hold would have any bearing of what's going to be built on the property, because you made reference to the type of build-out or development.
Correct, and part of, again, is ensuring that the property boundaries are correct to get the correct square footage. You know, again, I like setbacks. I like making sure that we keep everybody within setbacks. Again, granted, this is adjacent to core property. In this case, we need to make sure that we protect the lake that is there. So we don't want to continue to encroach on the lake. So that is where, again, I would adhere to setback variances or setback buffers to protect the lake as well. And just so an article was released yesterday that Lake Allatoona has been named one of the top lakes in the country. So it is a beautiful piece of property, and you are very privileged to be sitting on it. But we also need to make sure that we're doing everything we can while allowing the homeowner to make improvements to make sure that we also protect the lake, which is also our sole drinking water for Cobb County.
And just for clarification, let's assume that the Corps comes back and says that this is not the property line that we're looking at. Are you requiring the applicant to come back with a different site plan? What's the next step in that?
So yes, he would have to address the site plan, but then also, based on the discussion today, if what he has presented is, and the boundary lines are correct, right, and we have that all resolved, then he still needs to have his site plan be within compliance with the code for setbacks. Again, this is not adding on to an existing structure. My understanding is that they are going to completely tear down the existing structure and rebuild. So therefore, if that is the case, and they have the acreage that they claim they do, then they should be able to build something within the requirements that everyone else follows.
Okay, thanks.
And that's where it is not clear, because right now we are articulating a process that is not documented and that I'm not hearing staff assert. If there is a process that an applicant needs to go through in this area, I think that process should be known and articulated for any applicant to rely on and for us as a board to rely on. I need some help in understanding that, because I'm hearing this is not a process that we follow, and I'm not hearing staff say this is the process.
Well, as far as this goes, Chairwoman Cupid, this is the first time we've had a property line dispute that I've been here with the core property. The applicant did submit a lot of documentation, and, I did my own research on this, and the very plat they submitted for the other business packet that shows the proposed house, it shows that concrete monument at the very corner of his property where it's supposed to be. So once I got that, I went and did some further research. This property's probably been sold 4 or 5 times over the last 30 years, and every single time it's gotten bank financing, it's gotten title insurance.
And they have to do serious, diligent title research for it. So I have an issue with us playing the role of a technical expert. I have a serious issue with that.
I understand, Chairwoman. This is a one-off situation. We're probably not going to encounter again. So I think we need to go by what Commissioner Gamble says and just ensure that this property is his property.
Then and this may not be the first time. As she said, there are other homeowners in the area that have had similar interests. What do we do moving forward to ensure that we don't get into this kind of situation again? Because we have other Army Corps
There are,
properties.
and if you look at the GIS map on the board right now, directly to the left of this lot, you see 3 other parcels that kind of jut out, right there next to it. And then that little piece, those are all in the same boat. They got deeded the property gores back in 1977. Tim, can you zoom out a little bit? Okay, go down to where, keep going that way. Keep going to those 2 lots at the very end. Those 2 lots were in the same boat also. They extended their lots another 60 or 70 feet.
Okay, so are you telling me the property gores will then indicate where the property line is?
That's right. So the GIS may not be correct for the property lines, but the deeds bear out that the property lines are not correctly shown on GIS.
Okay, and you're sharing that this gentleman provided photographs of the property gores?
He provided me photographs of where the Corps of Engineer discs are that mark the property lines. And they're a straight line going down that entire property line. So there's no jogs.
Okay, as we are all learning a little bit more about this, it will be helpful if we can just articulate this in some form or fashion moving forward. It's not just clear for us, it's clear for the applicant. It seems like it's probably ripe for consideration as we have the Unified Development Code, which is supposed to help clarify information.
And Chair, I think, clearly this is sort of a unique situation, certainly an outlier. So what we can commit to doing is just, as we have other requests that are similar to this, perhaps we can look at some additional steps, conferring with the Corps of Engineers before bringing it forward to the board.
Yeah, that would be helpful. It makes me think of in Commission District 2, when we have things that go before the ARC, that just gives us verification about development. And it may not be the ARC process, but there is some very clear consideration for all parties when we do something in that area.
Right, and the Chattahoochee is a little bit unique in that it is subject to the Chattahoochee Corridor Master Plan and the Rivers Protection Act. I think what's a little unique about this area near Allatoona is so many of these lots are very old, and as you see, there's a lot of interesting history in how different pieces of property have been deeded and changed over the years. So I think just moving forward, we can look at a process to be sure that we are taking the appropriate steps, due diligence on these unique situations to confer with the Corps and just make sure that we've got the best information for the board.
And I think Commissioner Gambrell should be conferred with as she's communicated with other property owners that seem to have a semblance of a process that they had to go through that, again, we're just not seeing.
Yes, we'll be glad to make sure there's something very clear moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
John, I have a question for you, and just for my fellow board members, this is in staff comments under site plan review. It says, if this variance request is approved, a subdivision plat revision must be recorded prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy showing all improvements on the lot with any approved setback reductions and referencing the variance case in the standard plat revision note. John, I didn't think this was a platted subdivision.
It's in a platted subdivision, but I think where that comment comes from site plan review is this was, the boundaries of this property have changed over time, that's clear. And they've not been noted in Superior Court deed records. So what site plan wants them to do is re-record the plat like the one you showed that was to the south as all one property instead of having the original Caruth property and the 1977 property as 2, combine them into 1 so it's on record.
So this stipulation that you have in here, he's only going to have to redo his lot, or is he going to have to do all, 13 that are in this cul-de-sac?
It's only for his lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Burrow, you had your mic light on before. Did you have any other comments or questions?
Only that if we're reducing the 90 days to come back, I mean, nobody knows how long it'll take the Corps of Engineers to get a response. So you might want to say 30 days or 60 days, or if we get a response sooner.
And that is where I put it on the record that, again, I have been communicating with the Corps. They did send me an email at just after 10 o'clock this morning that they have submitted it to theirs. So it is in the process.
Okay.
So that should help Mr. Glancy in getting this resolved. if that helps you.
Well, and you can always continue it.
Right, that's what I was-
If you do 30 days, you
Yes.
could always continue it if you haven't gotten a response by the Wednesday before the deadline.
I think that's a great
Just a
suggestion.
suggestion. And if you make a motion, we can adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to hold OB 13 of 2023 until the May 16th, 2023 hearing date.
Second.
I'm sorry, sir. We have a motion and a second, and we typically don't have communication beyond the applicant, but if the commissioner is open to hearing from the gentleman from the floor? Correct. Okay. I mean, he could be sworn in. It's up to you.
Okay.
It's up to you, no? Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, commissioners. John, is this our final matter? I see your mic on, so I'm not going to adjourn just yet. Attorney Rowland?
Correct, because you're going to ask the board if they would move into executive session and give them a specific time for us to be able to do that, to regather on the third floor.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Bill. Commissioners, I move that we go into executive session. I have a meeting that I'm late to, so my motion is for us to go into executive session at 1:30. And the county manager is aware. That'll give us time for lunch. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.